Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville is now resuming, having recessed last night. And tonight on our agenda are 3 items: the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study, final study report, the Downtown Parking Garage Feasibility Study, the Downtown Cultural Hub update. Those last 2 items are for receipt. They're information for receipt. And item number 11 is a recommendation for a decision. And we have a number of delegations who've signed up to share information with council on number 11. And therefore, it seems to me that it would be in the interest of accountability and transparency to share with you that council has received a motion for item 11 from Councillor DeMoff, and it would have the effect of delaying the decision until later in the year. And that's relevant to everyone who wants to make a delegation on item 11, because if you're busy talking to a decision and it turns out council's headed another direction, you need to know that when you're framing your information for council. Plus, you may want to save your remarks for when it comes back if it were to be successfully referred. So I'm going to read it out for everyone's interest, and we may be able to put it up on the screen depending on the ability of the equipment to work and everything. Madam Clerk, you want to give that a try? So number 1 is that the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study be referred back to staff to provide an additional option that includes wider sidewalks and bicycle lanes on Lakeshore Road, which would involve removing some or all of the parking on Lakeshore Road, and that the consultant be directed to review existing studies on the impact of bicycle lanes on retail sales and vacancies. 2, that the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study report be provided to council in conjunction with Downtown Parking Garage Feasibility Study, and include reference to the 2012 parking study to provide context for the parking needs of downtown. And 3, that a minimum of 10 days public notice, including those who have expressed an interest in the study, be provided prior to these reports being presented to council. And with that, now everybody has the advantage of the same information. And Madam Commissioner, do you have any kind of presentation you wish to make on number 11?
We do have a presentation for council. It's done by a team, starting with Dan Cozy, our Director of Engineering Construction.
All right. So with that, Mr. Cozy, you are in the batter's box.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council, members of the audience. My name is Dan Cozy. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Director of Engineering and Construction for the Town of Oakville. Very happy to be here tonight because this culminates well over a year of work with regards to the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study. This project was launched late in 2013, but the staff team working on it's been working on it for several months longer than that as we put together the RFP. The project or the study was coordinated as part of the downtown plan with the Downtown Cultural Hub study. And there was an extensive public consultation process throughout the study, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on this evening. The core staff team that was assembled to look after this study represented several departments from the town. I'd just like to acknowledge them, if I may. We have Jill Stephen from the Engineering Construction Department, Christina Tizard from Planning, Janice Olbina from Parks and Open Space, Kirk Bigger from the Planning Department, Adam Kiley from Engineering and Construction, and Mary Jo Milhomans from Corporate Communications and Strategy. I really enjoyed working with this group. I wanted to thank them for their efforts over the last year and a half. In addition, Brooke McElroy was a consultant that was retained by the town to assist us with the study. They're represented here tonight. Ann McElroy, one of the principals, and Colin Berman are here tonight on that side of the room. Thanks for coming. There was a transportation study component to the project, which was completed in 2014. That work was undertaken by Hatchmont McDonald, and that study is included in the appendix of the full study document. The study work is complete, and we're really, truly are excited to be here tonight to present the recommendations to you. We're going to have 4 people in together, in total, 4 people from the project team. We're going to use both podiums, and we'll get started right now.
Thank you, Dan. Mayor Burton and members of council, I'm Christina Tizard, Manager of Urban Design in the Planning Services Department. I will be providing a brief background of the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study in order to set the context and for the materials and recommendations that will be presented by my colleagues here this evening. Our study had 2 points of origin or motivators. First, to address the end-of-life cycle of Lakeshore Road East, and second, to address several of the key action plans or strategies that emerged from the Downtown Oakville Strategic Action Plan of 2010, specifically transportation access, mobility and safety, urban design direction for the streetscape, and town square. Our study also was also informed by the policy direction of the new Livable Oakville Official Plan and recommendations that emerged from the Downtown Heritage Conservation District Plan. Our study was launched in October 2013 and soon after was aligned with another significant project within the downtown, the Cultural Hub Study. Based on synergy and geography, both studies were aligned in December 2013 under the Downtown Plan for collaboration on stakeholder and public consultation, as well as to generate creative outcomes. And there will be a separate report under the Downtown Cultural Hub later this evening. The Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study was initiated 1.5 years ago. As a team, we set out to review the existing street network to achieve equitable mobility for all users. We also identified improvements to the existing cycling network and facilities. We identified parking implications and developed mitigation measures. We reviewed the existing downtown streets, including options for enhancing the boulevards, whether that was achieving greater accessibility, achieving more usable widths, and incorporating street trees and quality furnishings. And finally, to recognize the needs of the existing cultural facilities within the downtown and to incorporate elements of the Downtown Cultural Hub Study within our own work. At the outset of the study, together with the Cultural Hub Study, we established a vision and 5 objectives. This really allowed us to create a framework that would assist us in articulating the intended outcomes, as well as to help guide us in our investigations, our engagements, our conversations, and decision-making. Back in July of 2014, the Transportation Streetscape Study and Cultural Hub Study teams made a mid-study presentation to this group. The DTS team presented a brief on the study concept as well as the overall approach taken to date, the research and consultations that we had undertaken, the study findings, preliminary options for a streetscape master plan with a focus on the Lakeshore Road corridor for prioritized reconstruction, and an outline of the next steps that we intended to complete. The endorsed next steps included completing a detailed streetscape master plan for all downtown streets, recommending a preferred option for the Lakeshore Road East corridor reconstruction, and completing a master plan for Town Square. We are here tonight to report back on what we heard and accomplished as we move through those next steps since July 2014. Tonight, we are presenting the final study recommendations, seeking approval of this comprehensive study and the final transportation and streetscape master plan, as well as seeking the green light to proceed towards detailed engineering design work for the Lakeshore Road East reconstruction and streetscape project, subject to the 2015 capital budget. But before we move to the recommendations, we wanted to acknowledge and highlight that our work was richly complemented by extensive stakeholder and public consultation. With each consultation opportunity, we focused on specific goals and outcomes. We sought out various occasions to engage, as well as different means to engage. In total, we engaged with a focus group that was comprised of key community stakeholders and representatives and really became a sounding board for both studies. We engaged with the Downtown BIA, representing property and business owners, with the residents associations in and around the downtown area. We also engaged with various town departments, external agencies, utilities, and specific user or interest groups. And finally, with members of the general public who had an interest in downtown and the studies that we were undertaking. Our engagement consisted of various modes. In person, we had 2 community meetings and 3 interactive workshops. We had 2 rounds of stakeholder interviews and numerous focus group sessions. In total, we had over 1,500 attending or participating in those various consultation modes. And we also engaged online with over 1,600 persons signing up to access meeting dates and materials and to participate in our online discussion forum where citizens posted their ideas, provided feedback, and also voted on each other's ideas. The consultation process was critical for identifying opportunities and constraints and in assisting in prioritizing some of the design options brought forward as we contemplated those. The study team's goal was to understand and assess the interests to develop a balanced master plan. And we have a very detailed overview of the consultation process contained in the consultant's report in section 2.3.
Mayor Burton and members of council, I'm Jill Stephen. I'm the Senior Manager for Transportation Strategy in the Engineering and Construction Department. And I'm going to provide an overview for you of the master plan itself. The master plan work was informed by a transportation study, as noted by Mr. Cozy earlier, which was completed in June. The transportation study included a safety assessment, an operational assessment, and reviews of the movements and needs of all modes of transportation and types of transportation that we see downtown: pedestrians, cyclists, transit cars, and commercial vehicles. The master plan has been developed to increase mobility and accessibility, to promote a pedestrian-oriented environment, to balance the transportation modes, and to integrate heritage conservation objectives. The elements of the master plan include the transportation components, such as facilities for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorized vehicles, two-way street conversion, commercial loading zones, and parking. Also includes the flexible streets and streetscaping, such as the materials and furnishings. This is the Downtown Transportation Streetscape, or DTS, master plan. Centennial Square and Navy Street are to the west, Allen Street to the east, Randall to the north, and Robinson Street to the south. And a larger version of the map is included with the consultant's report. The master plan implementation includes converting the downtown one-way streets to two-way streets. For motorized vehicles and bicycles, a two-way street network makes it easier to get around. Some of the longer crosstown trips can also be diverted away from downtown. Two-way travel also facilitates the provision of the curbside commercial loading zones, and pedestrian safety improvements would also be part of the two-way conversion plan. This slide shows the location of the commercial loading zones. Again, there is a larger copy included with the consultant's report. The pink dots on this map show the proposed locations for the commercial loading zones, and the purple dots show the existing loading zones. These locations have been chosen so that there is one commercial loading zone within approximately half a block from each of the downtown businesses. The commercial loading zones will be for the exclusive use of commercial vehicles picking up goods or making deliveries during a set time period, for example, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. The spaces will then become parking spots for the remainder of the day. These commercial parking zones are important because the loading activity that occurs in the center lane on Lakeshore will not continue once the road is reconstructed. This is one of the recommendations that came out of the safety assessment in the transportation study that was mentioned earlier. Parking, and especially on-street parking, was a topic of particular importance to some of the stakeholders during our consultation events. The provision of bump outs, intersection improvements, and bicycle lanes does reduce the overall number of on-street parking spaces. The greatest changes from the current to future situations will be on Church and Robinson Street, where one side of on-street parking will be removed for bicycle lanes. The proposed number of spaces remains close to the existing condition on most of the other streets. And on some streets, such as Reynolds and Trafalgar, an increase in parking spaces may be possible. The cycling network in the downtown master plan is based on a loop system, which will provide connections to and from downtown. Buffered bike lanes will be provided on Robinson and Church Streets, and there will be bike lanes on portions of Navy and Allen. Sharrows will be included on Lakeshore Road. Bicycle parking will be provided throughout downtown, and there's also the potential for bike corrals to be installed in parking spaces. A larger version of this plan is also available in your package. The master plan incorporates a flexible street concept for George and Navy streets. Flexible streets are open to regular traffic during most days, but for special events can be closed to traffic so that the entire right-of-way is available and can be used for the event and by pedestrians. The streets will be curbless, and this allows the action to spill out onto the street when the road is closed to vehicles. Visual and tactile changes identify the transition from boulevard to road, and bollards and tree pits are also used to differentiate between the boulevard and street areas. George and Navy were chosen as the two flexible streets because of their connections to Centennial Square, the former post office site, and Town Square. In general, the streetscape plan for downtown includes 4 components: the pedestrian clearway and marketing zone, the tree furnishing and edge zone, the on-street parking area, and the travel lanes for bicycles and motorized vehicles. Different materials and finishes are used to identify the different zones. The pedestrian clearway is envisioned with concrete pavers. The tree and furnishing zone includes soil cells to help the street trees thrive, and permeable pavers which will help with stormwater management. On Lakeshore, the parking zone will be concrete to differentiate it from the asphalt travel lanes. The master plan is based on using high-quality materials and furnishings on each section of the downtown street network. During our consultation on the master plan, we presented 3 palettes of street furnishings for public comment: traditional, classic, and contemporary. The contemporary theme was selected based on the feedback we received during consultation. A simple contemporary palette will provide balance and a subtle backdrop for the nearby heritage buildings. These pieces will define the public realm as uniquely Oakville. The elements shown on this slide are examples, but moving forward, we would like to obtain some samples of the benches, bike racks, and other elements that could be placed downtown for people to see and use, and then provide us with their thoughts on the individual pieces. I'm now going to show the cross sections and plan views of the streets within the master plan area. Lakeshore Road will be presented in more detail later in the presentation. These cross sections illustrate the vision for downtown streets, which will be implemented over time. As a flexible street, Navy Street will complement the redevelopment of Centennial Square. During special events, the road can be closed to vehicles and become an extension of the square itself. On-street parking is removed to allow for wider boulevards and more street trees. A pedestrian signal is recommended at Church Street, and with space for cyclists and the two-way conversion, the link between Centennial Square and the rest of downtown will be improved for all users. George Street is the second flexible street in the master plan. As a flexible street, it will play a key role in connecting Town Square and the former Canada Post site, tying together both the locations and the activities that can occur in these spaces. The materials used for George Street should match the final scheme for Town Square and will extend into the intersection with Lakeshore Road. As with Navy Street, the pedestrian realm will be enhanced with wider sidewalks and boulevards, and a double row of street trees on either side south of Church Street. Between Lakeshore and Church Street, there will be no on-street parking. However, one commercial loading zone is provided. North of Church Street, parking will be allowed on both sides. Church Street forms part of the downtown cycling network with buffered bike lanes on both sides. On-street parking is provided on one side, and the space gained from the removal of on-street parking on the other side is used for the bike lanes. Church Street will evolve as the streetscaping plan and downtown cultural hub are implemented, and so this plan includes conversion to a two-way street, wider boulevards, and improved growing conditions for street trees. Church Street also lines up with the center of Centennial Square, and there's an opportunity through the cultural hub work and through the master plan projects to take advantage of the iconic view looking west down the street. Robinson Street will also form part of the cycling loop downtown and will include buffered bike lanes as well. On-street parking will be provided on the north side of Robinson, while the existing parking on the south side will be removed to provide space to construct the bike lanes. There will be 2 lanes of traffic, 1 in each direction. Randall Street is currently one-way, but is proposed to be converted to 2-way traffic in the master plan. The 2-way conversion will slow traffic by narrowing the street and will create a more comfortable pedestrian environment. Included in the design are wider boulevards, new materials, and improvements to the street tree zones. Thomas, Dunn, and Reynolds Streets will retain their on-street parking and their lane configurations. The lanes will be narrowed a bit to provide more sidewalk space. The on-street parking and commercial loading zones will serve both Lakeshore Road and the up-down streets. They will be important connecting streets for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorized vehicles traveling downtown. Allen Street is narrow, and that limits the changes that can be made to the right-of-way. Street trees will be provided where space permits, and the travel lanes will be narrowed to provide more boulevard space. If additional right-of-way space can be acquired, a 1.5 meter wide cycling lane can be added north of Lakeshore Road. North of Lakeshore Road, Trafalgar Road is a major route into and out of downtown and will continue to be a major arterial as the master plan is implemented. It will remain in this section as a 4-lane cross-section. South of Lakeshore Road, Trafalgar will have 2 lanes, wider boulevards, and on-street parking.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. My name is Adam Kiley. I'm a project leader in the engineering and construction department. I'm going to be speaking to you about the options for Lakeshore Road as well as the preferred option. As part of the DTS study, the team looked at 3 different options for the reconstruction of Lakeshore Road. Lakeshore in its current condition is coming to the end of its service life and will require reconstruction in the short term. It's important to note that in all 3 of these options that the existing right-of-way on Lakeshore Road is fixed. Excuse me. With competing interests such as vehicular traffic, transit, parking, pedestrian facilities, and cycling facilities, all 3 options aim to accommodate a balance of these interests. It's also important to note that although flexible streets are being considered for George and Navy streets, due to grading and accessibility constraints at transit locations, Lakeshore Road is not being considered as a flexible street. Option 1 includes a reconstruction of Lakeshore Road as is. The road will be reconstructed retaining its current configuration, but it will also include new streetscaping features. The cross-sectional features of option 1 will include 1 travel lane in each direction, as well as the retention of the center turn lane. This option includes parking on both sides of the street, as well as maintains the current boulevard width, which is 4.55 meters. This boulevard would include a pedestrian sidewalk, as well as a tree and furnishing zone. It's important to note that in this option that the center turn lane will not be used as a commercial loading zone going forth. In this configuration, commercial loading zones would be implemented prior to or during construction of Lakeshore Road. Option 2 includes the removal of the center turn lane. This space would be dedicated to the boulevard area and result in the widest possible boulevard width. The cross-sectional elements of option 2 include 1 travel lane in each direction, as well as parking lanes on both sides of the roadway. The removal of the center turn lane allows for this additional space to be dedicated to the boulevard area, which results in a boulevard width of 6 meters. This would include a designated marketing zone for businesses, a pedestrian sidewalk, as well as a tree and furnishing zone. Option 3 also includes the removal of the center turn lane, but it would include the implementation of dedicated on-road cycling facilities. The removal of the center turn lane would provide some additional space to the boulevard area, but the majority would be used for the dedicated on-road cycling facility. The cross-sectional features of option 3 include 1 travel lane in each direction, parking is retained on both sides of the roadway, and the dedicated on-road cycling facilities as well. To accommodate the dedicated on-road cycling lanes, the boulevard width would be reduced from 6 meters to 5.2 meters in width. This option would not provide a dedicated marketing zone for businesses, but it would include a slightly wider sidewalk as well as a tree and furnishing zone. Later in the study, a hybrid of option 2, which included inline bike sharrows, was created. This was done in order to address equity of space for all users. In this option, the travel lanes of the roadway are widened slightly to allow for a shared space between cyclists and motorists. This additional space is taken from the boulevard area and reduces the boulevard width from 6 meters to 5.85 meters. The boulevard would still include a dedicated marketing zone for businesses, a pedestrian walkway, as well as a tree and furnishing zone. In July of 2014, Council approved the vision, objectives, and evaluation framework for the Downtown Cultural Hub and Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Studies. The three options were evaluated based on these 5 evaluation criteria, which included economic vibrancy, cultural focus, infrastructure for the future, natural environment and cultural heritage features, as well as cost. After the evaluation, the preferred option is hybrid option 2A, which provides the widest boulevards as well as the inline bike sharrows.
Oops. We'd like to talk about Town Square as well. As we all know, Town Square is an urban plaza in the heart of the downtown core. It was originally created as part of the redevelopment, the residential commercial condominium development by Cancor Properties in the mid-1980s. The site occupies, in fact, the former George Street right-of-way connecting Robinson Street to Lakeshore Road. If we look at the footprint of Town Square, about 80% of it is owned by the town, and about 20% around the peripheries in private ownership. It was open to the public in the early 1990s. In 2012, the Parks and Open Space Department identified a need to renovate Town Square. So as part of the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Study, work was done to develop concept options on what we could do with Town Square. 3 options are presented in the study. And what I can tell you is of all the things we did in the downtown study, the most polarized opinions were on Town Square. In fact, there was a segment of the public that felt there's nothing wrong with Town Square. Why change it? And there was not one particular option of the 3 that stood out. We also acknowledge that the Downtown Cultural Hub study and the work that the town is currently doing on the special event strategy will provide additional insight into the type of programming elements that are required in Town Square. So the staff team is recommending a postponement of selecting a preferred concept for Town Square at this time until such time that we're able to resolve the programming elements, and we would be reporting back to you sometime in the future. Oh, I'm going backwards. My apologies. Well, there's a good segue, backwards and moving forward. There's been a lot of talk about Lakeshore Road and how we're going to move forward on it and how we're going to do it and how long is it going to take. We are prepared to issue an RFP on the market within the next month or so, and our plan is to have a consultant in place in May of this year. I can tell you that it's an 18 to 24 month assignment to do the detailed engineering work on Lakeshore Road. There's going to continue to be extensive public consultation throughout the detailed design process. For example, as Ms. Stephen indicated earlier, we would like to, as part of the design process, acquire samples of the types of furnishings, so a street pole, a bench, a garbage receptacle, etc., and actually pilot them out onto the right-of-way and get people to sort of see them, sort of get a feeling for which ones they like, and they could report back to the design team. That will be a great assistance to us in making the final selections. We also have to coordinate the project with the region of Halton. And I can tell you that we've already commenced that process. The region of Halton is on board. They acknowledge that they need to do work to their underground services, namely the wastewater main and the water main. And they need to upgrade those services, and they're prepared to partner with us, retain the same consultant to do the detailed design work, and go forward, including that in our construction project. We have to work with our utility partners, that being gas, hydro, and telecoms, because they're underneath the pavement on Lakeshore Road, and they may have to do work to their facilities, so that has to be coordinated. There's also the issue of the two-way conversion, because that's something that could actually be delivered in advance of rebuilding Lakeshore Road. But right now, we can't tell you exactly what that's going to cost. It's more than just restriping the paint on the road. and placing signs on the right-of-way. There's some geometric improvements we have to do at some of the intersections. Some of the signals have to be modified. So our plan early on in the detailed design phase is to have the consultant put together, do a review and evaluate how we could implement it and actually provide us an estimate of the work that we would include in the preparation of the long-range forecast later this year. There's a matter of other projects in the downtown that have to be coordinated. We recently closed tenders on the Rebecca Street Bridge project, and we're looking to award that in the coming weeks. That is a project we've partnered with the Region of Halton and Union Gas as they're suspending infrastructure underneath the deck. That work would commence this year and be wrapped up in 2016. The Lakeshore Road Bridge requires our attention. The deck has to be rehabilitated. That has to be done separate to the Rebecca Street Bridge project. We wouldn't do it at the same time. There's an opportunity here, perhaps, to rebuild the Lakeshore Road Bridge or to rehab it as part of the project when we do the Lakeshore Road. And in fact, we would like to look at opportunities to extend the streetscape elements onto the structure. But it has to be done. Then we have the Region of Halton continuing on with their wastewater and water projects along Randall, Dunn, and up Trafalgar Road. Those projects will be completed in 2016. And we have Navy Street. They have to upgrade the wastewater main there as well. And that would be done in the next 24 months. We've talked a lot with the public and the BIA about how are you going to do this without disrupting the downtown. And it will be difficult to do this without affecting anyone. Anytime you build a road in the heart of a downtown core, it's difficult. In the appendix B of the staff report, not the full study document, actually I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. In the appendix of the full study document, you'll see a document referred to as the Lakeshore Road Construction Mitigation Strategy Backgrounder. What that was our work over several months in visiting many municipalities in Ontario, those municipalities that reconstructed a road like Lakeshore Road in the heart of their downtown. So we went to places like Kingston, Cambridge, Guelph, and Markham. And it was a learning experience for us. Essentially it was a guide. What that document is a sort of a best practices guide. How do we best deliver the project? So we look at procurement processes. How do we select the contractor? We look at the construction methodology and approaches. Pre-construction planning, which is critical in a job like this. Project design and construction liaison committees. That's a real interesting idea. This would involve members of the business community and residents associations along with the project team and the consultant to participate during the design, at certain stages of the design process, and participate during various stages of the construction project when we're managing the contract. We even talked about, bantied about an idea of having an office in the downtown core during the construction project or in the latter stages of the design, so that members of the business community could come feel at home and walk 2 blocks to the design and construction office to deal with staff and the consultant. Of course, we need a great communications plan to redo Lakeshore Road and as well as marketing and wayfinding. And of course, we have to maintain some form of parking during construction. But I can tell you that we're going to lose parking temporarily on Lakeshore Road. We can't maintain all the parking, and I'll get into that a little bit later on. Other ideas for mitigation? Well, and it's before you this evening as well, another report. We could build the Church Street parking garage, not solely for the purpose of the Lakeshore Road project, for this and other reasons, and do it prior to the Lakeshore Road project, and we'll get into the benefits of those later on. And of course, I mentioned the early implementation of two-way conversion, and in addition to that, we can implement the commercial loading zones in advance of Lakeshore Road. We could offer some form of free parking in the downtown during the construction project. For example, the lots on Church Street could be free certain days of the week, certain times of the day, things of that nature. And we can even look to provide a shuttle service with the support of our friends at Oakville Transit to potentially shuttle patrons that are forced to use lots in the periphery of the downtown and bringing them into the core. So the timing of the Lakeshore Road construction. We sat down with a consultant over the last 3 months, a different consultant, not Brooke McElroy, a consultant that's had a lot of experience in doing these types of projects, primarily in the Toronto area, to help us come up with a realistic approach to how we would schedule, how we'd schedule the reconstruction of Lakeshore Road. What's a given is we need all new subsurface infrastructure. All the pipes, everything's got to be replaced. We want to provide new service laterals to all the properties. Because 3 years after we build Lakeshore Road, the last thing we want to happen is someone to redevelop and say, well, I'm going to dig up your road now. We don't want that to happen. So we want to provide those services in advance. Comes at an expense, but it protects us in the long run. And of course, all new surface works, new asphalt, new boulevards, everything. In developing the sort of a preliminary schedule, and that's what's attached as Appendix B of the staff report, not the study document. It would be a minimum 2-year construction time frame. We're looking at 3 blocks per year. We'd start later in the winter season, as soon as Mother Nature allows us to go, and go to about the middle of November. We want to stop before the Christmas shopping season. There would be a road closure for each phase. There's no way around that. We have to close the 3 blocks of Lakeshore Road when we do it. There's just not enough space. Pedestrian access, though, would be maintained, and we'd try and maintain that to the highest possible standard. And with the utility work that requires to be done, we may actually have to let them go first at the start of every year to do their thing. The earliest possible start date, putting all this into consideration, us getting going in the next couple of months, is the spring of 2017. That's the absolute earliest we can start. And I can tell you, just from this morning, I was at the downtown BIA annual general meeting, I know that the businesses down there are looking for some form of certainty on when's this going to happen. Is it 2017? Is it 2018? Are you building a garage first? Are you doing this? They want to know, and I think that's understandable. Construction costs, we've estimated it at a high level, $9.25 million to do Lakeshore Road. $850,000 of that is already in the capital budget request for 2015, and the budget committee will be looking at that over the next 2 to 3 weeks. That will get us the engineering design complete. The balance, $8.4 million, is currently not budgeted, and that would be addressed as part of the development of the capital forecast later this year. As I mentioned earlier, the two-way street conversion cost is not known at this time. As I said earlier, we're going to be working early on in the design phase to get that figured out, and we would be reporting back to the budget committee as part of the forecast for that. There's a real benefit to converting the roads before Lakeshore is done. And Halton's work along Lakeshore Road, as I mentioned, is included in our project. So we're not talking about 2 projects, it's one big project. And their items are not included in the $9.25 million. They'll be paying for that as part of their own capital budget. That's it.
Councillor Giddings.
Did you want a minute to catch your breath, Mr. Cozy?
I'll drink some of my tea.
A couple of things. First of all, the report states that the proceed to undertake the engineering design work for the reconstruction subject to the approval of the 2015 capital budget. You just mentioned that that funding is in place, so that can start now. I'm just looking for clarity.
Well, to be totally clear, we have to wait for the budget to be approved before we could award the RFP. We need a bit of time to put it together. It would be on the street probably within a couple of weeks after the budget's approved.
So it's a budget issue, not a capital forecast issue?
Correct.
And the 18 to 24 months, does that include time for public feedback, the materials, the looks, the feels?
That's everything.
All right. You mentioned service laterals. Great to hear. Never thought I'd say it's great to hear about service laterals. At the same time, what about Oakville Hydro or the region for business owners or property owners that want to increase their electricity and increase their water? Would this be done at the same time, that conversation had with the property owners?
Well, we'll certainly have that conversation with the property owners. I can tell you that in our preliminary discussions with the region, they're on board. They understand the concept of upgrading the services, so water, sanitary, and in our case, even the storm laterals. As those buildings get developed, they will require a storm lateral as well. With regards to hydro, I mean, that could be accomplished rather easily, but we have not asked that question yet.
All right, two-way street conversion. You talked about doing that in advance. How far in advance? A year, couple of months? Let people get ready?
I guess and again, I should be saying through you, Mayor Burton, on all these questions, so I'll say that now. Everything is through Mayor Burton here. If we were to start in 2017, obviously our plan would be to convert the streets in 2016, sometime in 2016. So we would have that budget request ready for the 2016 budget cycle later this year, and we would include that number in the forecast. Well, it would actually be a request for the 2016 capital. My apologies.
So in terms
and we would go in 2016.
In terms of realignment, we're talking 6, 8, 10 months in advance?
Something like that, yeah.
All right, and you had, in your report, you talked about mitigation strategies and the number of municipalities that you spoke with. The biggest concern I think a lot of us have is that 2-year construction window. If there's anything that can be done in terms of pre-work, reaching out to other municipalities in terms of if you had to do it again, just so we can go into it with our eyes open, because it's going to be a pretty tough time for a lot of commuters and business owners. So that's the only thing, comment, not a question, but that's the only caveat I have. And thank you, Mayor Burton. I'll let someone else have a turn.
Well, we have a lineup. Councillor Hutchins.
Here we are. I hope you can hear me now, Dan.
Okay.
Lakeshore Road, why was it not designated a flexible street too? So a variety of things could be had on that. Parking could be removed during the summertime, could be put back in the wintertime, and a whole host of variable things could be done with it.
Well, that's a good question, Councillor Hutchins. To be clear, we initially went forward on the understanding that we may be able to implement a flexible street on Lakeshore. We define, just to be clear, we define a flexible street, not necessarily because you can remove the parking, but there's no grade difference between the boulevard area and the road. It's all one grade.
Right.
So St. Lawrence Market, I believe, has a flexible street in Toronto. And you would delineate the boulevard space from the road space using street furnishings, bollards, trees. In our analysis of the concept on Lakeshore Road, being it's a significant transit route, our buses do not have the capability to kneel down to zero, if I can explain that. Without the curb in place on Lakeshore Road, we would have to build ramps at all the transit stops, and they would have to be graded out at something like 10 to 1, 12 to 1 across the boulevard space. And to be honest with you, it would be a grading nightmare. And we can't see how we could let water run off and drain without causing puddles all over the place on Lakeshore Road. So for that particular reason, and because Lakeshore Road still remains an arterial roadway, busy road, the towns that we went to visit earlier in 2014 where, Guelph, for example, Carden Street, that's where their city hall is, but it's not a main thoroughfare like Lakeshore Road is. We were actually warned by staff at these other municipalities that we should be very careful in where we implement flexible streets, especially where the volumes are high. So for these reasons, we're not recommending Lakeshore Road to be a flexible street, with the exception that the section in front of Town Square, which ties in with the flexible street at George Street, would be a flexible street, and we would use the same design treatment as George Street. And we're trying to, trying to have, imagine Town Square as an extension over Lakeshore Road and up Church Street to Randall Street, and it would have that same feel and look. So we would have that section where Town Square fronts onto Lakeshore as a flexible street in that area there. But east and west of that, it would be curbed.
So because of the buses can't kneel down, because you can't put the grading, you can't do it. That's what I heard, right?
Yeah, that and the type of, just the volume of traffic on Lakeshore Road, we didn't feel from a safety perspective that it was a good idea to go flexible on Lakeshore, both those reasons. But primarily, the grading issue with transit, you can't solve it unless you have these ramps all over the place, and it's going to be awful, to say the least.
Okay, well, I'd like to come back later.
Councillor Hutchins, you're done?
Yes, if I can think of some other things, I'll come back later if I may.
Everybody gets a second round. Councillor O'Meara.
Thanks again for all the work you guys have done. Question in terms of costs. So we're looking at, without the design costs, we're looking at 8.4 million. But from what I understand, we've got 3 options for Lakeshore East, option 1, option 2A, option 3. Are all 3 options the same cost, or is there a differentiation in which option and what the cost associated with that option would be, or how does that factor into it?
We've only costed out based on the preferred option, but I'm very comfortable in saying that the variation in price wouldn't be significant. Your main costs here are your boulevards, the granite curbs, and all options, the granite pavers. And all options, we have granite. We have the street furnishings. You have a little bit more asphalt in some examples, and a little bit more concrete and paving stones in the other options. There could be a slight variation in price, but not significant.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor DeMoff.
Thank you. One of the questions that was raised to me by a resident about this study was why we didn't look at access to the waterfront as part of the whole context of the study. The waterfront has been and continues to be one of the biggest draws that we have from everywhere, not just from our own residents. And yet we stopped the study area at Robinson Street, and the concern that they had, and I understand where they were coming from, is that, having access from Lakeshore and Robinson to get towards the lake. So why haven't we included that in what we were looking at?
Through you, Mayor Burton, I think as part of this study, it was looking specifically at the streets within the downtown area. I think as part of the cultural hub study, we did look at how we could extend and connect to other elements outside of the downtown. So there was quite a bit of work done in looking at a riverfront park, which just connects you into the 16 Mile Creek in order to get more access into that area. There were also some options that looked at how we could connect better down into the lake through Navy Street. There is quite a bit of private ownership along the edge of the creek, so trying to get a complete public access through there would be a challenge. There is, though, the Harbor Master Plan that's starting within the next couple of months, and so there's an opportunity to look at additional public access through that work as well.
Thanks. When we met, he was specifically referring to George Street. So the ability to you've got Town Square, you've got beautification happening north of Town Square, but also extending that south so that you can draw people down towards the water or up from the water, which is where they're going to be anyway.
There were some limitations in terms of coming out of Town Square and moving down towards Robinson, in terms of the width of that and expanding it out, given the private ownership in that area. So there was no opportunity within those bounds of Town Square to do that. Beyond that, you start to get into the Heritage District and in the area south of that. So what we looked more as is a visual connection, because as you stand at Town Square, and especially as you move up George Street up into Randall, you have a view of the lake from those vantage points. So George Street and the whole connection into the Town Square become very important elements for the streetscape, so you can make that visual connection to the lake where we don't have a physical connection.
Okay, and from what you said, there'll be other opportunities to look at making further connections towards the creek and the lake as we look at these other studies, right? Okay. One of the things I brought up when we discussed this before, and I think everyone here knows I'm going to bring this up, but we haven't talked at all about the economic benefits of the bike lanes. And, you know, so I've provided some of the members of council with studies that have been done, but I had asked if the consultant, and I know we spoke about wherever bike lanes go in, you see an increase in sales and a decrease in vacancies. And it's not only just because people are cycling, it's because the street looks better. So I haven't seen anything in here about, you know, 47% fewer commercial vacancies on 1st and 2nd Street in New York. 49% fewer commercial vacancies at Union Square when widened sidewalks and a protected bike lane were put in. And I'll speak more to this when we talk about my motion, but we haven't had any comments about the economic benefits of the bike lanes, and I'm just wondering why. It's very frustrating.
Well, good point, Councillor Demoff. A few comments to your comments. First of all, we did evaluate all the options, and economic vibrancy was included as one of the points that we evaluated. The project team actually met with J.C. Williams and Mr. Archer, who's doing the retail strategy downtown. And we asked him point blank, how do we go about evaluating these options and doing it justice with regards to, you know, bike lanes on Lakeshore versus Sharrows versus bike lanes on Church and Robinson. And his comment to us was that he really didn't see a significant difference. And he's not saying that bike lanes do not, that's a given, we accept that. But he said it was going to be very difficult for us to establish what the difference was to the businesses on Lakeshore when you have a dedicated bike lane on Church and Robinson, which is literally 75 meters down the other side streets, and Sharrows on Lakeshore. And he said, are bikes going to be allowed on Lakeshore? Well, yes, bikes can use Lakeshore anytime they want, even without the Sharrows. Is there going to be bicycle facilities along Lakeshore? Yeah, there'll be bicycle parking. So his advice to us when we met with him was that you can't really distinguish a significant difference between scoring the economic vibrancy part with the bike lanes on Lakeshore versus the loop network. However, having said that, if you look in the appendix and you look at the score that we assigned when we evaluated the options, we gave option 3 the full score for economic vibrancy for the cycle lanes component. Option 2A got a score of 2 versus a 3. So it won out. It won out on the economic analysis part. But I'm just qualifying, that's a real difficult thing to quantify, compare, easy to sort of quantify it over the status quo option, because the status quo option, there's no bike lanes downtown. But option 2A promotes a bike route through the downtown, quite an extensive network. Unfortunately, for those that wanted bike lanes on Lakeshore, we didn't have the dedicated lanes on Lakeshore. We developed that hybrid option with the Sharrows. And I saw your email this morning, and that was actually in our minds, the super Sharrow, which is essentially a green background under the Sharrow line. I mean, that was always our plan. Unfortunately, we didn't show it in the graphics in the study. So I think we've addressed that issue, Councillor.
That actually led me to my next question, which was about the Sharrows, because even though I would prefer that there are bike lanes on Lakeshore, if we do end up going with the Sharrow, and for the benefit of those who didn't see, Super Sharrow has been used in Kitchener, And it's a bike Sharrow like we saw on the screen, except that it's got the green background that's similar to a bike lane. I have a picture if you want to put it up, but it does, are you saying so that is what we're going to use then if
Yeah,
we go
so-
with the Sharrow option?
So please show that, but if we all look at this graphic here, if you can just imagine a rectangular box around the Sharrow, and it would be painted in green, so the white would be on top of the green. That's a super Sharrow. And that just promotes it more visually to the driving public.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. Thank you.
So in addition to just doing the, in Kitchener where they did this, they didn't just put in the Sharrows, they also included a public education campaign around the fact that bikes and vehicles under the Highway Traffic Act can share the road. So the bikes can ride single file through downtown, as well as signage that, that reinforces that. So can we incorporate similar to what they've done in Kitchener if we do end up going with the Sharrows and include the public education and the signage?
For sure, and I'm a little biased. I think we have one of the best staffers around when it comes to active transportation. Of course, I'm talking about Chris Clapham. And just recently, we were awarded the gold level from the Smart Commute people. Certainly, if we are implementing we are going to implement Super Sharrows on Lakeshore Road. We'll have a public education campaign, for sure.
And I agree with you in terms of the staff that we have working on this. So my last question has to do with notification about tonight's meeting. I think it was Christina mentioned the 1,500 people who had signed up at the various meetings. When did they get notified about tonight's meeting?
In terms of the 1,600 that are mailing list, well, they would have been notified through a series of opportunities in paper as well as through our focus group members, but a direct mailing went out to the 1,600 last night.
I recognize, and I brought this up earlier, and I recognize it went in the paper, but those are people that, 1,600 people that expressed a direct interest in this study, and I'm really concerned that they only was sent the email last night. I was contacted this morning by several people, and I know of others who didn't get the email until this morning, which is really unfair to them to expect them to digest all this information and make themselves available at this meeting tonight. So I just don't think that's proper notification, given the outstanding work you did on public consultation. And bringing all those people in, and to have that short a notice to those 1,600 is really, really unfortunate. So, okay, that's all my questions for now.
Councillor, would you like to adjourn for 10 days?
Is that an option?
It's always an option.
I'll think about that, yeah. I do think they should have been given more notice to be able to be here.
Would 10 days be enough?
Yes, it would.
Thank you. You have a microphone for this. Councillor Adams.
Could I ask you a little bit about the funding requirements going forward? So we've got funding for the design work, but then there's an estimate for the next 2 phases of the reconstruction. Would you mind pulling up the overall downtown conversion project? I think it was the 2nd slide or 3rd slide or something like that.
This slide here?
Well, that's part of it. So so I'm talking about the 8.4 million, but then you've got a slide that's got the map of the downtown.
Oh, okay.
It's early on in the, sorry for making you flip all the
Okay,
way back.
it's 47 slides, so.
That'll do, yeah,
Okay.
That's the cycling one, but I meant for the overall one.
Okay, sorry.
That's fine, we can work off of that. So you've got 8.4 million, and it's not super clear to me whether that entails only the work on Lakeshore or whether it incorporates some of the costs for some of the other components of the overall downtown transportation study?
It's only Lakeshore Road from approximately the approach to Navy Street, from the west of Navy Street to the west approach on the east side of Allen Street.
To Allen,
It
okay.
includes all the surface works, our underground works, all the furnishings to get us to a complete project. And this
Okay,
thing has a
so-
mind of its own here.
So the 8.4 is only the lake shore from Navy to Allen?
Correct.
Okay. So then there's 2 or 3 other components, and I'm not sure how they're going to get priced out. So first is there an estimate for the two-way conversion component?
No, that's what I was referring to earlier. So
Okay.
if this was a matter of us simply just restriping the lines in the downtown, it'd be pretty easy for us to tell you what that would be
Yeah.
worth. It's that, signs, and we have to carry out some geometric improvements. I'll be a little bit more specific. The channelized right turn island from Rebecca to Navy South has to be removed. We have some geometric improvements to do, I believe, at the intersection of Dunn and Randall. I'm going by memory here. And we also have to make sure that the backside of the signals are in place on those one-way streets. I mean, they only exist for the one direction right now. So that may require it, and it's not as simple as, well, just add a couple of signal heads and we're good to
I
go.
don't argue that it's simple.
Yeah, no, it needs new controllers, it may need a different type
So
of
what-
controller.
So understand that there's a bunch of stuff that has to happen.
And we have to put that estimate together early on during the detailed design phase, and we would provide that estimate to council in time for the next budget cycle.
So would that be part of the 875, or is that just
No,
separate?
it's a new item, it's
Okay,
an
that's a
additional
new-
item,
New item,
sorry.
okay. So separate and distinct, council will have to determine to go ahead and do design work to get the pricing for that. Okay. So the conversion is one, and then there's all the side streets. Is that separate and distinct from the conversion issue, or?
Yes,
Okay, so there's a second item. And then is there a third issue around the loading zones, or is that associated with the design work of the side streets? and
the
conversions?
loading zones that would, if we implemented the commercial loading zones early, they would simply occupy the parking spaces that are there today. So that's a simple switch over, it's just signs and some pavement markings.
So to summarize, there's the 8.4 million, there's a dollar figure for the two-way conversion, and there's a dollar figure for the, I'll call it the side streets conversion.
Correct.
Okay, so there's three, in effect, 3 projects, although you wouldn't presumably go ahead with either of the second ones alone, you'd want to do
No,
them all
those
together.
would also be reviewed as part of the development of the overall forecast. So again, this is a long-term plan. If,
Would
you know,
you-
obviously Navy Street could go in the immediate future if the cultural hub, I mean, that would be important for the redevelopment of the Centennial Square site. But we don't have a timing plan for the balance of the roads.
So is there a need to go ahead with, I'll call it parts 2 and 3 before the main conversion, so not main conversion, the main reconstruction? Or can the reconstruction go ahead and the other 2 components happen later?
Just so I understand, the other 2 components being the early conversion of the two-way to the one-way and the commercial loading zones, or the
no,
conversion and the other projects?
The conversion and I'll call it the side street.
Okay.
Conversions.
To be quite honest with you, Councillor Adams, we could go ahead and we can do Lakeshore Road without the early conversion of the two-way system. We would recommend that we implement the two-way conversion because it'll make detouring through the construction a lot easier.
Right.
In fact, we'll have to do it anyways because you won't be able to make a turn up a one-way street where we close the road.
And the side street conversions?
Those would be dealt with as part of the capital forecast later this year.
And so again, those ones, you would prefer to do them in advance, or you think they should be done simultaneously, or?
No, they would all be done as individual projects going forward. So we would have to put forth a plan that says we're going to do, and I'm just using an example, Navy Street would happen in this year, Church Street would Church or George would happen in this year, and we would have to build these all in as separate projects. We could combine some of the roads, a couple of the roads, but to do the whole downtown in one shot would be very difficult to do and pricey.
So there's a bunch more dollars associated with all of this, So it's way more than 8.4 million, is what you're saying. Is there a, do you have a scale? Are we talking another 8 million, 2 million, 10 million?
Councillor Adams, what we have costed out right now is Lakeshore, because that's the one that needs to be done. That would include the conversion of 2 ways not yet costed out, but it's our recommendation that be included all as one project, including the commercial loading zones. All of the side streets, we're not recommending they go forward. At this point in time, in fact, we're not even pegging any particular time for them to go forward. They could proceed through a variety of ways, and I'll give you some examples. Navy Street perhaps could proceed if we were looking at redoing Centennial Square, because then we could adopt that flexible street, be able to use the outdoor space in front of Centennial Square, and better use it in that way. So we would look at including that when that project came along. There may be other examples where there may be a project being undertaken downtown, and we would look to a development to implement a portion of those streetscapes through that development process. There may be a need to reconstruct a particular type of street, or a street either because of water or wastewater services needing to go underneath, or we ourselves need to reconstruct that road. So there would be an opportunity to put in place those streetscape improvements through that process. So as part of this program, this sets out a very long-term master plan of how we see and what would be the characteristics of the downtown streetscape, but implementation right now, what we're looking at is just the Lakeshore component.
Thank you so much. You've made it far clearer in my mind. Appreciate that. And so this could be a 10-year project to get to the end of doing all the side streets.
It could be a 20 or 25-year project,
right.
and perhaps even longer.
Or even longer, right. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So the only real question in terms of immediate financial requirement is the cost of the 2-way conversion then. Okay, yeah. Can I ask you about the parking on Lakeshore? There's 120 spots currently, approximately. During the phasing of, yeah, the next one in, I think, actually, that one right there. So there's 120 stalls right now. If we phase it in over 2 years doing the reconstruction, do we lose 60 during each year? Or is there?
Yes, approximately. If we were to, we'd assume that half those spots are west of the mid-block of Lakeshore Road and the other half are east.
Okay.
We're going to lose 60 per year temporarily.
Okay, and therefore, the next item on our agenda is the parking garage project. How critical is the parking garage to being able to move forward on the reconstruction? Could you move forward with the reconstruction without the parking garage? Or a modified parking garage? Parking garage that has fewer spaces?
Well, we wouldn't be recommending the construction of a parking garage solely for the purpose of dealing with the Lakeshore Road construction. It helps. There's a whole slew of reasons why we would need to build a garage before the Lakeshore Road project, but it's not because of Lakeshore. It's one of the reasons. We lose 60 parking spaces, as you said, per year as we phase the construction of Lakeshore. That's temporary. We're losing 39 spaces permanently in the downtown as a result of the streetscape master plan. We're not losing them all on day one because some of the losses are on these streets that won't be delivered for several years.
Right.
There's, however, when we look at the Downtown Cultural Hub project and the redevelopment of the Centennial Square site, if you've seen the options that are being developed there, you're going to lose the parking lots in the rear of that property, more than likely, as well as potentially the parking on Water Street as we redevelop that whole site. Of course, when the square is redeveloped, it would accommodate a structured parking within that development, but it doesn't happen at the same time. So you're going to lose parking when we develop the Centennial Square. If we were to redevelop the Canada Post building sooner than later, the location of a garage would serve that purpose as well. So there's many reasons why. I like to think that building the garage first provides the town the most amount of flexibility in dealing with all the things that has to happen downtown and the effects to parking, not just for Lakeshore Road. That would help.
the two-way conversion effect, as I read it, is the loss of a, relatively speaking, small number of spots in the order of about 10 or 15 or something. If we go ahead with that and we lose 60 spots during the construction period, we're losing a little bit more than the ultimate conversion of 414 to 375. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'll let the next go.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Giddings, second time.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cozy, when you were speaking with Councillor Demoff, you talked about the economic development of the economic benefits of bike lanes. And did you mention that you assigned a ranking for Lakeshore versus Robinson/Church, and Lakeshore got a higher ranking?
Okay, just to be clear, we evaluated the three options on Lakeshore Road against themselves.
Okay.
One of the factors that was evaluated was economic vibrancy. Within that category, there were several scores assigned. For the bike lanes, the three options on Lakeshore Road, we scored option 1, status quo, as the lowest score. We scored option 2A with the Sharrows, or the Super Sharrows, with the second highest score. And we scored option 3, the one we're not recommending, with the bike lanes, with the highest score. So we assigned it the highest benefit for economics for amongst the Lakeshore Road options. Perhaps the confusion was when I was explaining earlier, we met with J.C. Williams to say, well, how do we go ahead, like how do we quantify an evaluation for the results of, you know, what a bike lane will do for business? We all acknowledge that, you know, I've been to the same sessions that Councillor Demoff's been at, where they've shown that, you know, it is a benefit to business. But the difficulty is that when we were evaluating Lakeshore Road, there were bike lanes 75 meters up the street on Robinson and Church, and there were Sharrows on Lakeshore Road. So it was very difficult to quantify. So at the end of the day, we assigned option 3, bike lanes, the highest possible score for economics, and the Sharrows option got the second highest score. Overall, when you look at the score, there was a difference from, I think, 60 to 52 in the overall scoring in favor of option 2A.
And that factored in the loss of 120 parking spots on Lakeshore?
No, because the parking was not lost in option 3.
Right.
In none of the options. When we came to council in July of last year, we presented 3 options to you.
So in a perfect world, you keep the parking, you add bike lanes, best of both worlds.
Yes, and again, and one of the presenters tonight used the term competing interests. And we started right from day one during the public consultation sessions. You have a building on the south side of Lakeshore, you have a building on the north side of Lakeshore. You have 24.4 meters. And if you want extra lanes of traffic, which we're not recommending, that's going to come at the expense of something else. If you want wider boulevards, that's going to come at the expense of, if you were to remove a lane of parking on Lakeshore Road, that's going to give you 2.2 meters. I can tell you right now, that's going to add 1.1 meters to the boulevard in option 3. So you go from a 5.2 meter boulevard to a 6.3 meter boulevard. And that is an addition of, for us Imperial people, 18 inches more space to the boulevard, which is great, but it's going to cost 60 parking spaces. And throughout our consultation process, we heard it loud and clear from the business community and even some of the residents down there saying, don't take away the parking on Lakeshore Road. We actually looked at the workshops. We asked people to look at some options where we would make it a pedestrian mall or we would remove the parking. And at the time, it didn't have the legs to go forward. So when we reported back to council in July of last year, we advised you that there were 3 viable options downtown. Status quo without the center lane loading operations, because that can't continue. Option 2, which at the time was no Sharrows, but the widest possible boulevard. And option 3, bike lanes and on all three options, parking on both sides. Then we developed a hybrid option with the sharrows or super sharrows, and that's the option we ended up evaluating, and it was the one that won out.
I appreciate the clarification.
Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. A couple questions. First of all, you talked a lot about, not talked a lot about, in the report there was a lot of talk about the mitigation and getting some best practice information, I guess, from other municipalities. You talked about Cambridge, Guelph, Kingston, and Markham. What I didn't see here was any kind of assessment in terms of what the ultimate impact was on those downtowns. I mean, we know what the mitigation strategies were, but I didn't see anything that actually gauged or talked about what downtown ended up looking like and how it actually had an impact. Because I mean, now it's obviously the fear is what the impact on the business community will be. And I know I have a friend that owns a property at 144 Main Street North in downtown Markham, and he was gravely affected by the long-term construction that took place right in front of his property. So what was the overall, do you have any kind of understanding of what the overall impacts were? Did you learn anything that we can bring back to correct some of the mistakes that were made? And maybe, because that, to me, I think this is a fantastic plan. I think it's an amazing plan. I can't wait to see this happen. My only concern is what happens in the interim. So that's where I am personally.
A fair point, Councillor Knoll, or fair points. I could tell you that some of the places we visited, the projects were still ongoing. So Kingston, for example, they were still working on it. So I guess to say that the book wasn't out as to what happened over there. But they have a fairly vibrant downtown. Things seem to be going pretty good over there. Markham was interesting. Markham did not close the road. They left one direction of traffic open, but they could afford to do that throughout their phases. They had the benefit of rear parking. They don't rely on on-street parking. There's very little on-street parking on their main street. So they needed to provide one direction of traffic so people could access the businesses. I can tell you that Guelph had some real difficulties with their businesses. I could tell you that. I can't give you the number, I don't have it, but they said it was a concern. Anytime you build a road in the downtown core, it's challenging. There's no easy way to do it. But I don't have specific numbers as to, if you're asking, well, how many, did a business, did a business dissolve? Was it because of the construction, or was it for other reasons, or a little bit of both? I don't know.
I guess I wasn't looking for the actual metrics about failure rates as a result. I was more looking at what kind of mitigation measures did we learn about, or what, I think somebody talked about somebody mentioned, did you learn anything from their mistakes? Is there, like, for example, if you talked about Guelph, and Guelph had some substantial problems, have we actually gone and talked to some of the merchants to ask how the mitigation measures impacted them? Not just the municipal staff, but actually dug into it to get a bit of a sense of how from the most affected, their point of view, how it worked and how we could do better, as we obviously have to do this.
Well, I said, sort of on the corollary of your question, we learned what to do as part of our visits to these municipalities. We learned a lot. This wasn't just something where we went and basically reaffirmed what we already knew. We learned a lot from Kingston in particular, what they did. We learned a lot from Markham as well. They were the ones that told us about the project liaison committees, where they actually involved the businesses. We thought that was a real neat idea. We learned a little bit from all the municipalities. But to answer your question more specifically, yeah, we could engage those business communities and see how they felt about it. But this is, I've said it all along, right from the first public meeting, this is not going to be easy to do.
Okay, if you could take note of that, I think that'd be great if we could actually get into their heads to understand what they were going. And by the way, I just want to point out, I love the idea of having an office downtown, so there's direct accountability. I think that's one of the best ideas I heard in the mitigation impacts. So my next question is, we talked a bit about the potential of advancing the parking garage project. What is the time frame for building a parking garage?
Well, we don't have a time frame.
Assuming it was approved and assuming it was funded, et cetera, how long would I'm talking about in terms of construction?
Well,
just
It
seems
would all
it's-
depend, it would all depend on the form of procurement that we initiate.
Right.
If we're gonna go to a classic, design and tender process, it's probably, I don't know, 24 to 30 months. There's opportunities to do a design build, which would accelerate the process. I can tell you that, this morning, and sorry, Charlene, I don't want to steal your thunder, but the BIA indicated this morning at their annual meeting that they'd prefer to see the garage built in advance of Lakeshore Road. So if we were to do that, I would suggest to you that we could, subject to the approval of the funding, we would move forward on the garage. We'd probably have to delay Lakeshore Road to 2018 or in fact maybe 2019 before we, to get that garage done. I mean, if we can get the garage done sooner, we could start Lakeshore sooner.
You, in the report, it talked about the municipalities you talked to, one gave assistance, financial assistance to the BIA and the others didn't. Did you get any sense of whether that was beneficial for that particular project when it came to partnering, I guess, and communicating or whatever it was that they actually used those funds for?
We did understand it was very beneficial, and they had a very cooperative relationship with their BIA. One thing I wanted to note on an earlier question you had on the mitigation is part of the purposes of doing the retail strategy with the BIA that's currently underway right now is to look at some of those mitigation pieces that we can have in place. How do we market? What are those kinds of techniques that the BIA would use, and providing them the resource so that there is a strategy that they would have in place during that construction. So in part, that strategy gives that to them. But as we learned from the other examples around Southern Ontario, was that the ongoing relationship and the dialogue with the BIAs is essential to making the project, because they are the sponsors for downtown. They speak to the community and the business community. They can let us know about the ideas, the concerns that are coming up, but we can also convey information through them.
So I guess you determine if you needed to provide, or you want to recommend financial assistance once you've had a chance to go over that.
That's one of the options.
Okay, thank you. Does the 3-block per year plan extend the construction period? Are we sacrificing anything by using that strategy, or is that just the best engineering strategy to employ?
From all accounts, and we've met with a really good consultant on this, that's the best way to go about it. That would assure us to get completed by the middle of November of each year, and it would take 2 years. If we went,
I'm sorry.
No, if we went the whole thing, we'd be closing all of Lakeshore Road, and we're not so sure we wouldn't get it done in the year. It would be 2 years anyways, and it would be just too much to go through in the downtown. Kingston, by the way, they did it a block at a time, but they might have a much longer plan to revitalize Princess Street.
Right. I just want to make sure we weren't sacrificing anything substantial to do that. My last question, where is it here? Last question. What does the pedestrian access look like during construction? I was hoping to see like an illustration of what that might appear. I mean, it's probably not pretty, but can you give a bit of a description of what that might look like physically? Is there hoarding? How do you protect the citizens and the construction workers and the merchants all at the same time?
So again, when we visited all the municipalities, we learned a little bit from all of them. What we took from Kingston, one of the things we took from them was how they maintain pedestrian access. They actually called an RFP, and I'm not saying that's what we're going to do, but they called an RFP for their procurement process. And that process, an RFP isn't based on price alone. It's based on value-added benefits the contractor would propose in addition to price. So you're not necessarily awarding to the lowest bid. So awarding to the lowest bid, you could get a great contractor, but you may not get the best contractor sometimes. With an RFP, you're giving scores for the things that they would do. In Kingston, one of the value-added benefits that was provided to them was the concept of ambassadors that the contractor provided. And they would act as ambassadors to patrons in the business core. They'd let them know what you're looking for, shoe store, whatever, it's over there. They actually rolled out rubber mats, not a red mat. They rolled out a rubber mat every day so that you weren't walking on gravel. Of course, that it wasn't like that all the time, because there's sometimes you're digging across the front of a building. But they rolled out a rubber mat, and they actually separated the construction zone with the I'm going to call it crowd control fencing. We've all seen it, about that high, and you just run that along the distance. So you're separating the pedestrian zone from the construction zone. Now, you'd have to flip it, because eventually you have to build the sidewalk areas in front of the doors. So you would move that pedestrian, you'd have two of those crowd control fences, and with gaps at the entrances to the store. So that's sort of an example of what it would look like.
Thank you. I think if we had the ambassadors give piggyback rides to the people, to the stores, that would be awesome. But thank you for your, thanks for your answers, Mr. Cozy. That's great. Thank you, Worship.
Councillor Demoff? Oh, wait, Councillor Elgar, have you gone already? Not that I noticed. All right, under our rules, Councillor Elgar, then Councillor Demoff, and then Councillor O'Meara.
Okay, thank you very much to you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Cozy, I heard you just mention that you learned this morning from the downtown BIA that in fact they would rather the parking garage were built first rather than do Lakeshore. Did I hear you correctly when you just said that?
Well, I should let Charlene speak to that, but I was there, and that's what I heard.
Is that new info? Like, does that surprise you? Have you heard this before, or is this the first time that you've heard this?
There's been a mixed opinion throughout the course of the study. At times, there was some in the business community that thought that was a great idea. Others thought it wasn't. But you know, this morning, that's what I heard. And I apologize to Charlene. I should let you do that part of the speech. But that's what I heard.
So the parking garage is ballpark 23 million?
I may not need to do the presentation on the parking garage later this evening.
No,
but,
you probably won't.
No, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Yeah, you're doing a good
$23
job.
million.
23, and doing the main street, the one street on Lakeshore is 9 million or 10 million, whatever, ballpark.
Right, correct.
What makes sense to you? Chicken, which comes first?
We're
We're approving Lakeshore tonight, you're asking us, and we're only receiving the parking garage. Have we got things in the right order?
So I was going to just, before Dan answers, from an engineering perspective, I just wanted to say that I think it's important that you look at these projects in context of the capital plan. And that's why we are recommending that you make those decisions when you have the capital plan in front of you. Because then you're looking at all of the priorities throughout the town. In terms of, if you just looked at this particular area, a parking garage first has some advantages in that it provides for relief from parking. So it gives you that. You're using some of the time in constructing that while you're planning for Lakeshore already, so it's not a full loss of that time. And you add some more parking to the downtown. Starting with the road first, from a business perspective, gets it over with and done with. You know, there's a lot of benefit to, as they say, rip the Band-Aid off quickly, get it done, have it finished, and let the businesses get back to their business. So both of them have various priorities, and I think you'll hear from the business community in terms of how that affects them directly. You may want to hear that information. But we really think you should wait until the capital plan, and then you can look at it from a broader perspective.
But we don't have the money in the capital plan right now for the building of Lakeshore Road, do we?
No, that's correct, you don't, and you'd be looking at that through the capital plan as well.
Okay, yeah, well, thank
Right
you.
now, what we're recommending is just the design work, so we can get a good handle on that design, understand what the two-way conversion is. There is the money in the budget for the design, so that could be covered off. And then you deal with the capital costs of the construction in the long-term forecast.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to the delegation.
And I would add that, you know, that there is a recommendation that we proceed with a business review of the construction of the garage. And that's something that would be done in the next 60 to 90 days. So that is additional information that would be presented to council before it makes a decision on Lakeshore Road, garage, both, one or the other.
I appreciate that, but we are approving one and just receiving the other. Thank you.
Councillor O'Meara. I'm sorry, Councillor Demoff. Lost track of my note.
Thank you. One of the things that concerns me is the vacancies downtown. And we've been talking about construction and timing of parking garage. And I do think that we need to get some certainty on the timing, because I'm pretty sure there's tenants that either aren't renewing their lease or aren't looking at leasing until they know what the timing is. So I'm sure that it's impacting vacancies now, not just during the construction. Did you run into any of that when you were talking to some of the other municipalities in terms of pre-construction vacancy on these main streets versus problems not just during construction but prior to? Because we're talking 4 or 5 years out in terms of right now of construction here.
No, not really, Councillor Demoff. They didn't tell us about sort of the precondition. They told us what happened during. During our public consultation, and again, from what I heard this morning, is some of the concern with the BIA is that the landlords may find it difficult to rent out space, the current vacant spaces, because all the potential customers that come there, word's out on the street, the town's going to be reconstructing Lakeshore Road. And they're saying, why would I sign a lease now and go through 2 years of construction when I could wait until after the construction's done and reap the benefits of this great new road that the town's going to deliver? So some of the sentiment in the BIA was it would actually be better to wait till because they can't rent those spaces out. Again, here is what I heard this morning at the annual general meeting.
No, that actually is exactly what I'm saying. It makes a lot of sense that people don't want to sign a lease until the work's done if they know it's being done and is probably contributing to the vacancy issue that we've got. Going back to the parking garage, we're looking at doing a business plan for that because we don't have them, and maybe I'm not sure if it's you or Jane who would be addressing this, but we don't have the money for that now, and we are looking at doing a business plan. To me, it would just make sense to be dealing with this construction at the same time that we even have a business plan for a parking garage. Because it's 2 to 3 months to complete the business plan for the parking garage, correct? That's what the report said.
Yes, but I mean, there's also the idea of being shovel ready for Lakeshore Road. If council chooses to go forward with a garage first, there's no reason why we can't have the Lakeshore Road project shovel ready to start in 2018 or 2019 or 2017. Moving forward now with the detailed design just gets us ready, and it just reserves all the work in advance so that we're ready to go when it's time to go. That business case review can be done, and you're not committing tonight to constructing Lakeshore Road in any year. All you're doing, what we're asking you to do is to approve the recommendations of the DTS study, and we're asking for green light, for lack of a better word, to go forward with the detailed design, because subject to the budget approval, because it's already there. You are not deciding on when the garage is being built, and you're not deciding when Lakeshore Road is being built. That will come later this year. As Ms. Closey indicated, we do need to put together the capital forecast. There's many needs in the town. And we believe it would be more prudent for you to look at the whole picture before you make a particular decision on just one project or two.
So that kind of leads into, if we're looking at this as a 10 or 20-year project, and the bike lanes on Robinson and Church could be 20 years before they get done. I notice in the report, or in the study, it talks about putting bike lanes on Robinson right away. Will we be doing that?
Yeah, that's one of the recommendations. We can go forward with the cycle lanes on Church Street and Robinson Street early.
On Church as well? I thought it was just Robinson.
Well, at least we could do it either or. I
Okay,
think
no,
you're right, though.
that's
I think you're
fine.
right. Getting ahead of myself. I think it does say Robinson Street.
It does, if we could do Church too. It's just, that sort of ties into the whole, what you were saying about bike lanes. While I still believe that sales go up, the economic benefit is when the bike lane is in front of the store, not a block away. If the Lakeshore is delayed, we can still do the Robinson Street at the very least, bike lanes, when it's just restriping it, right? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. When the construction happens in the 3-block area, is it going to be fenced off with those, you said the 6-foot-high fences? Is that what it would look like?
Well, yes, the pedestrian zones would be fenced off. There'd be just construction barricades at the limits, so, you know, because you have to allow equipment in and excavators and all those friendly construction workers to access the site.
So, suggestion then, and one thing that I've seen that's incredible is they have that screening cloth that goes around the construction area that gives you the picture of what it's going to look like. They did it at Queen's Park in Parliament. I think that would be something that we should make sure we have, so people, pedestrians in the shops aren't staring at a war zone every day. They're looking at what it's going to be. So I'm not sure if we can look into that, or if that would be a part of the design.
That is a great idea. The only caution I have is that some of the businesses may look at that as it's obscuring the vision to their storefronts. I don't know. We'd have to run that by the BIA, and that's part of the project liaison part, right? Where we would meet with the BIA and we'd say, what do you think of Councillor O'Meara's idea?
Anyway, I just thought I'd put that out there. Thanks.
Right, let's see what kind of suggestions Councillor Adams has.
Can I ask you to help me with the understanding of the very last page of the 6.0 appendix, where you've got the appendix 6.1 order of magnitude costing? Very, very last page of the whole thing.
Okay.
So you've got total per meter figures there, and I wonder, would that be something that we could use to get order of magnitude costs for the conversion of Church and Randall, the two-way conversion?
We sure can, Councillor.
So if the 13,591 is equivalent to 8.4 million, my calculation would be that Church would be 4.6 million and Randall would be 6.4.
Well, it's all based on the length of the road, right?
So assuming they're the same
Yeah,
length.
if it's the same length, you're multiplying by 700 meters roughly, that's your cost. The
So-
up-down streets, I can't remember their lengths off the top of my head, but we could
I'm just trying to
provide
get
that.
order of magnitude. So we're talking then, in order to do the two conversions on the northern roads, we're talking in the order of 10 or 11 to 12 million dollars, approximately.
I'll trust your math.
Approximately. Okay, so I just want to give some sense of how big those projects are in terms of if we're going to put them into the capital forecast.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Councillor Hutchins.
Yes, thank you. I'm still slightly hung up on the width of the sidewalks that we've apparently recommending here. The present sidewalk is what, 4.8 meters?
Bear with me. Let's just look at the entire boulevard rather than the sidewalk. So it's 2.55 meters for the pedestrian area. There's a 1.5 meter wide tree zone and a 0.5 meter edge zone. So you've got about 4.5 meters from the curb to the face of the building. That's what you have today.
Right. So and there's the widest possible, which everybody selected because they recognized you need to have more sidewalk to make it more people-friendly. We go from 4.5 to 5.3. We also have a 2-meter sized, what we call a marketing zone for everybody. Was there ever a time when it was considered when maybe one of the lanes of cars would be removed and so that we could recover that space also, so we could extend the sidewalk even further, so we could make the marketing zone bigger and more of an impact on the street?
As I said earlier, during the earlier parts of the public consultation, that what we heard was that removing the parking on Lakeshore Road was not a good idea. It's the prime parking. It's the prime parking of the downtown. It's valued tremendously by the businesses down there. So when we came forward to you last July, none of the options included removal of parking. We did workshop those concepts To certain extents, they just did not have the momentum to go forward with the removal of the parking. It was just something we heard not to do. But granted, if you take away a lane of parking, you're going to end up with, and go with option 3, you're going to have a slightly wider boulevard than what we're recommending in option 2A.
And what size would then the marketing zone likely to be if you did that?
It would be it could be 0.45 meters wider, 18 inches.
That's all. One lane of parking only gives you 18 inches on either side?
Because you're splitting it to both sides, right? You're going to be equal to the north and to the south. So
But I
that's,
thought a lane of parking was something like almost 2.8 meters
no,
wide.
it's 2.2. It's 2.2, and what happens is you misquoted some of the numbers at the beginning of your question, Councillor, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It was 4.5 is the existing boulevard width today. It's 5.85 in what we're recommending in 2A. It's 5.2 meters wide in option 3 with the bike lanes. So if you remove a lane of parking, it's 2.2 meters, you divide it in half, and you apply it to both sides, you're adding 1.1. So it's 5.2 plus 1.1, 6.3. That's the new.
That was with the bicycle lanes.
That's with the bicycle lanes. Now, if you're talking about no bicycle lanes, then I agree with you. It's a much more significant, my understanding was to do that in lieu of providing the bicycle lanes by removing a lane of parking. That's what I understood, sorry.
No, I was thinking without the bicycle lanes because you've got the chevrons on there anyways, but expanding the sidewalk so it's much more people-friendly. What would be the marketing zone if we did that likely to be?
Okay, we'll use, that's not the right option, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll have to use this one and I'll explain. So this isn't the actual recommended option. In this option, it's similar to the recommended option, only it doesn't have the chevrons. In order to accommodate the sharrows, we had to widen the lanes a little bit to accommodate the sharrows, and we took 0.15 meters away from this boulevard. So in this case, the boulevard, I believe, is 6 meters wide. So in the recommended option, it's 5.85. You then take the 2.2 meters in the parking lane, you divide it by 2, and you add that to the boulevard. So you go from 5.85 to 6.95, almost 7 meters. That would be an increase of roughly 2.5 meters over the existing boulevard width today, or approximately 7.5 feet.
Correct. So then the marketing zone would likely to be a lot wider. The ability to give stores more space to market would be, what, 4 meters aside?
Yeah, for sure.
And that would be a much more substantial, for instance, patio or anything else, rather than having just the 2 meters where you could probably only put 2 tables. You couldn't put them side by side. So wouldn't that be a much more attractive streetscape to have wider marketing zones?
Well, if you're looking at it purely from the marketing zone perspective, I guess the answer to that question would be yes.
Because you could put in 2.
It's just the challenge for us was the competing interests. Everything comes at the expense of something else. If you want the additional space to the boulevards, that's fine. You can have it, but it comes at the expense of something else. And to be fair, throughout the public consultation process, we heard loud and clear, do not remove the parking on Lakeshore. And that's why we didn't even go there.
Well, that's kind of my point, is that it was never offered, so nobody really got a chance to vote on it. Basically what I see here is that we're designing the street for the car again and not for the people. We go from 4.5 meters to 5.8 meters, but that's a tiny addition to the streetscape and to the sidewalk, and really doesn't allow the stores in that thing to do very much of anything, because they're getting only 2 meters of actual places they can work on.
could just provide some assistance. We did 2 series of workshops on the lake shore. The first workshop was literally we were given, the participants in the workshop were given the width of the street and all the parts of the street, and they could design it. You saw some pictures of that in the presentation. And they could design that street however they wanted. And we had probably 8 or 9 tables where they designed that street. And so out of that, what we heard from the majority of tables was that parking should be remaining on the street, and they wanted the widest boulevard. And so we took that input and went away and developed the options, the 3 options that you see in front of you. And we brought that back out to the public again to provide some more input into it. So those were the 2 sessions that we heard. And so out of those 2 analyses, we felt that eliminating the parking was not creating that balance from what we heard from the public. And so we brought to council those 3 options, which included the parking on the street, and then the varying distance in the boulevards and the variations in the parking, in the bicycle lane. And so that was the analysis we went through. If you would like us to go back and look at something else, we can, but what we're here today and what we were here in July telling you was that from what we heard from the public, those were the comments that we heard, and that was the balancing that they were looking at.
Thank you.
Councillor Grant.
With great respect to the fact we have several people who want to talk tonight, I reserved asking questions, but I want to take us just from microscopic to macroscopic. The one thing that's been getting to me as we continue this conversation is, at the beginning of the evening, you'd said that many of the people in the downtown area want some certainty as to when this is going to start and when it's going to happen. And as we've continued through the evening, it's been, well, the parking garage, oh, push us back about 30 months, and this is going to push us back this many months. What can we do tonight to provide that certainty and to give us the best solution on staff's point of view within the best time frame for the people who are expecting this project, for their livelihoods and just for their peace of mind?
Oh, I would answer that by saying 2 things, Councillor Grant. Number 1, give us the authority to start the detailed design. We need to get moving on that. Number 2, that certainty will come later this year when the capital forecast is developed and ultimately approved by council. You'll be making those tough decisions later this year.
Thank you.
All righty then. We may have exhausted council's questions. And if we have, we will go to the public, and perhaps we'll go to the public after I take a question. I'd like to ask a question. Ms. Closey, could we hear the pros and cons of the impact on the downtown of delaying the authorization to begin design work as council is going to be asked to do tonight?
The delay of the design work, right now it's projected that it'll take us 18 to 24 months to complete that design work, which gives us the 2017 start date. If that design work is delayed, it pushes the time frame of the construction start off. So if you're not making that decision till sometime later, it's the equal amount of time that pushes it off. So if you were, for example, to push it until you're making decisions on the budget, 6 to 8 months, it would move the construction timing of 2017 out 6 to 8 months, and potentially even longer depending on when that construction starts, because we can't start during the winter season. So it could be anywhere from 6 to 8 months to a year.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the first delegation?
Our first delegation this evening is Charlene Pluman from the Executive Director of the Downtown Oakville BIA.
Welcome, Ms. Pluman. How much has changed since this morning?
The world is constantly turning, is it not? I do have copies of the presentation, if I could pass that forward to be distributed. So, good evening, Mayor Burton, Council. Thank you for having me here this evening. I am distributing copies of this presentation to those who also kindly joined. There's no pretty pictures, so you're not missing anything on what they're seeing. There are 3 things on the table tonight, and perhaps for expediency, I will delegate on all 3 if I can do so in the 10-minute time frame. First, I'd like to speak to the Downtown Transportation and Streetscape Report. The BIA would first like to thank Town of Oakville Council and the staff for all the hard work that has gone into this report to this, get it to this stage. So thank you very much for all the work that the staff has put in on the report. We would like to request further time for the BIA to present our formal view on the report in terms of the specifics. We've heard a lot of discussions today, sharrows versus bike lanes, delivery zones. There's lots of discussion here that we have a brand new board that would like some time to be able to formulate a formal response on the recommendations that have put forward. We'd also like to request that there's consideration given to the interim measures to support the downtown. So if we're looking at a 5, 10, 20-year plan, what are we doing tomorrow to save the businesses, and that there can be some consideration given to that. I'm certainly open to speak and answer questions about some of the design work that has been brought forward, but we do request more time to be able to provide that formal response on behalf of the BIA from the board.
Could you perhaps give us an idea of how much time you're talking about?
I'm going to say 2 weeks.
Would you be comfortable with waiting until the fall, as council is being asked to do, to have all of this together, the capital plan and all?
Certainly.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. In terms of the timelines, we're very keen to hear in the fall with the capital budget discussions what the timelines are. We would like to know timelines with some certainty, at least a not before date certainty, so that businesses can plan for that. In terms of construction phasing and mitigation, we do request the opportunity to actively participate in the mitigation and phasing strategy plan. So we've seen a recommendation of a 2-year, 3 blocks one time and 3 blocks the next time. This is the first we've seen of this, and we have not been asked our opinion in terms of appropriate phasing or how to make sure it supports the businesses, nor have we had a chance to discuss mitigation strategies, such as should there be financial remuneration to the businesses? What other strategies should we be doing? Should there be things like Councillor O'Meara mentioned for the screening, or is that a negative? We haven't had a chance to weigh in on any of this, and we would like that opportunity. We do request that there is greater mitigation strategies than what became apparent in the report. The suggestion of select limited free parking does not seem adequate when we're talking about such a substantial construction zone and an impact on the customers that would be coming down. We'd also require greater support for the businesses during construction, so whether that be financial mitigation direct to the businesses, enhanced marketing support, enhanced beautification support, I could go on, but we think there needs to be greater mitigation. As we've heard, this can stress the businesses to no end. We need to make sure there's a vibrant downtown when we come out of it, so we need to make sure there's a strong mitigation plan in place before we head into it, during it, and coming out of it. So we with respect, ask that we be very much a part of that decision. In terms of the garage feasibility study, thank you to Mr. Cozy for representing what was talked about this morning at our AGM. He accurately suggested what was brought forward, that we would like to see the parking garage done first, complete the garage and have that in place before the streetscape construction continues. We do encourage that council favor a design build option so that the garage can be built with expediency. There's several reasons for this. One is less construction time is always good in terms of the consumer's point of view. Second, this garage is needed and it's needed now. So let's build it yesterday and get it done. In terms of supporting data for why we see the need for the garage, the Town of Oakville parking study that was completed in 2012 indicated a need for the garage in a 10-year period from that study time in 2012. The difficulty of finding parking spaces in downtown was quoted in the J.C. Williams study of July 26, 2014, of one of the top 5 reasons why visitors do not return to downtown. 70% of our visitors arrive by car. They need somewhere to park. With the cultural hub plans, as was discussed today, There's going to be a need to have increased supply for that demand. Should we put something at the post office site, or should we take away the parking down by Water Street as we redevelop that park? The temporary and permanent loss of parking during and after the construction needs to be resolved with increased parking support. And we have indications from landlords that the lack of parking options is impeding their ability to secure rental interest in the areas that we have available for rent. In terms of the garage design, we, again, respectfully request the opportunity to be a part of discussing the designs. One has been put forward in the feasibility study, but we simply request that there's more discussion of why that selection was put forward, why recommendation 2A is put forward. When I look at it, it's a net gain of 236 spaces when all is said and done. If we're looking at increasing the demand by putting in a new cultural hub, is that 236 spaces going to support that demand plus the demand that exists now that is not being met? And I'd like to see some proof that that is the case. And also the planned use of that space, are we maximizing it? If we're looking at saying we could build 5 levels, but we're going to build 4 instead and put a green roof on, does that make sense? Does that make the best use of the valuable space that's there? So we'd like the opportunity to further speak with staff and council about the design recommendations going forward for the garage. In terms of the cultural hub update, we haven't had a chance to hear much about that this evening. So tonight we just want to speak to the fact that we do appreciate that the indication for the cultural hub is a dispersed model. We think that is a strong one for downtown, but that this is as it's an update only, we again refrain from making a formal stance on the cultural hub at this point in time. But we are very keen to continue working with the town on cultural options for the interim. So what can we do now to develop the downtown as a cultural hub before any buildings get put into place? And we are very appreciative of a meeting held earlier to that respect, and we encourage that those discussions with the town continue to make sure we can start developing those action plans right now. So at that point, that is our delegation, and I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your delegation. We'll start over here to be different. Councillor O'Meara.
Thanks very much for coming in and speaking tonight. So just so I'm clear, you're asking council to defer a decision on moving forward with the design work on the lakeshore?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Next, Councillor. Anybody?
Yeah, that would be me. Thank you for coming out. Get to see it at 2 meetings in one day.
Oh, poor
My
you.
pleasure. You heard the motion that the mayor read out at the start of the meeting in terms of the possibility of wider sidewalks and bicycle lanes and so on. Do you recall that?
Yes.
One of the items in there that said which would remove some or all of the parking on Lakeshore Road. I see on your slide number 3 implications from landlords that lack of parking options is impeding rental interest. Would that cause a concern having that possibility out there for any period of time?
It's my understanding that yes, having no parking on the street in favor of a bike lane or otherwise would be a detriment to the downtown, if I understood your question correctly.
And part 2 of that, would that cause landlords additional difficulty in terms of unknowns?
It's my understanding, yes, but I'm not a landlord, so I defer that to a landlord to potentially address.
Well, there's plenty of time later on this evening. We may hear from one. Thanks.
Councillor Demoff.
Thanks for coming out tonight, Charlene. I actually had a question about that same point. The landlords that lack of parking options is impeding rental interest. Is that for retail or office or both?
Both.
And what landlords, has anyone talked to Bentall Kennedy, who's the largest landlord downtown?
I have, but I don't want to speak on their behalf. So if we want to speak to them, we could potentially ask them to approach.
Okay, and that's all. Thank you.
Next along here, anyone? Moving right along over here.
She's answered my question.
Next, Councillor Knoll.
Thank you. Councillor Downtown Dave asked my main question, but I do have just a small follow-up question to my questioning to Mr. Cozy, and that is with respect to learnings from other downtown municipalities that have gone through similar things. Has the BIA, first of all, does the BIA reach out and communicate with other BIAs and other communities to share ideas and to exchange best practices? Is that an ongoing practice?
Yeah, it is, yes.
And have you done any particular research around what you can do as an association to support your members and what you should be asking the municipality for? Have you researched this to learn from others' experiences from the business operator's point of view?
Loosely, but not to the extent we'd like to.
Okay. Is that something that you would be prepared to do on, after this meeting, should you get the deferral, or even if not?
Yes, it's definitely a part of it in terms of us wanting to make, have more time to make a formal recommendation, is to do such things as that.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Adams?
Could you confirm, Mayor Burton asked the question, but I didn't hear the answer. Did you say that you're okay if we deferred this until as late as the fall?
Yes.
You are, okay, thank you. And the other question I had for you was about the parking garage. You had in your presentation a number of 236 net. How did you come to the 236?
So I looked at the 348 for the option that's being proposed.
Yep.
Less the 73 sites or spots that are currently on that open air site right now.
Yep.
Less the 39 that would be lost after the transportation.
Thank you. Okay, now I follow you. And given the estimated costs associated with the parking garage, if there were really, relatively speaking, high parking rates to use that garage or get monthly parking, would your membership accept that? If they were, right now I think we're $50 a month kind of parking. If we were $200 or $300 a month parking to carry that cost, would that be acceptable?
I haven't surveyed the members to that extent, so I can't answer on their behalf. I can answer my personal viewpoint is that that would not be acceptable.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate understanding your point of view on that.
All righty then. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Elgar.
Yeah, I just want a little bit of clarification from you. I heard what you said, you'd rather have the garage go in first. With the downtown commercial district, they're talking just about the $850,000. Do you feel they should go ahead though with that, just the design at this point? Or do you, like, that's all, because that's really what we're looking at tonight is just the design, not the building of it, because we don't have the capital for building it yet anyway. But do you think they should go ahead, or you want to come back in a few weeks and let us know?
Assuming if my assumption is correct, that approving this is approving such things as approving, yes, it's going to be bike lanes on Church and Robinson. Yes, it's going to be delivery zones. You know, if it's approving everything in the recommendations at this point, then I would ask that is deferred. If approving it is just to say, yes, we're moving forward on doing some sort of design and there's the opportunity to discuss further what that design may look like, then I'm okay with the approval. But if it's locking in the design at this point, we'd like the opportunity to create a formal response to the recommendations that were put forward, and the week from when we've seen it has not given us time to do so.
Well, I must say, I thank you for coming forward this evening, and you don't leave much of a gray area, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm going to thank you again.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation is Leon Hawes with the Oakville Cycling Club.
Welcome, sir. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Your Worship, members of the committee. My name is Leon Hawes. I've been a resident in Oakville since 1971, and I'm a founding member of the 25-year-old Oakville Cycling Club. I represent, with Dave Harris behind me, the advocacy interests of some 350 members of the cycling club, and primarily their interest is that of safety. However, in this advocacy capacity, I also happily served as a member of the Downtown Focus Group and enjoyed working with them since last November of 2013. Additionally, I've also attended a number of bike summits, the most recent of which was hosted by the Niagara region and held last week in St. Catharines. These past few days, I've reviewed the P&D report, which is before you today, and together with the DTS study and its 195-page appendix. As a result, I just have one technical concern. The recommendation of sharrows on Lakeshore Road between Navy and Allen Street. It's shown as option 2, which yes is on your screens in front. A sharrow, for those that are not terribly familiar with them, is a relatively new term. It's only used in North America, and it really is a joining of two words, share and arrow. Share the road, arrow. That's what it is. And it's basically to warn other road users that cyclists could be on that road. Much the same way as a green bike route sign that you presently have all over around the town. A sharrow, unfortunately, provides nothing but a warning symbol to motorists. Option 2, in front of you, shows a sharrow in a 4-meter wide drive lane. By contrast, option 3, which I don't know whether it's possible to switch to option 3 on your screens, shows a 3.3 meter wide drive lane plus a 1.5 meter bike lane. There is no doubt which is the safer of the two. Option 3. The narrowing of drive lanes from 4 to 3.3 meters will reduce the speeds of vehicles and has been attested to in many articles on the web. And the narrower the lane, the more traffic calming takes place, thus reducing the differential speeds between cars and cyclists. The boulevard sacrifice between option 2 and option 3 is only 0.65 meters. I brought my tape measure because I grew up in inches and feet, and I had a difficulty working out what that is. It's that much between my hands. It's slightly longer than 2 loaves of bread end to end. For that, I feel that the sacrifice is in reducing the boulevard is a relatively small sacrifice to make for making bike lanes more safe. Downtown Oakville must become a destination point, and bike lanes will help to promote this. I sincerely want to see Oakville downtown to be a vibrant community. However, I would just like to see that the sharrows be replaced with bike lanes. Complete streets is another new term that some perhaps have heard, and I've only just been exposed to it relatively recently. It means that basically complete streets promotes policies, planning, engineering, and such that it's safer for all road network users, be they drivers, cyclists, pedestrians, or transit users. Providing bike lanes on Lakeshore Road would make Lakeshore Road a complete street, i.e. option 3. So in conclusion, option 2 encourages vehicles to speed due to the wide 4-meter lane, creating dangers for pedestrians and other road users. A wide drive lane, 4 meters or above, provides no safety for cyclists, whether it's marked with a sharrow or not, as it encourages speeding. Why anyone would object to safe cycling lanes surprises me, especially as motorized vehicles still have an adequate 3.3 meter lane plus a 2.2 meter parking lane as shown in option 2. Lakeshore is not a highway and should not be viewed as such. I think it's time for Oakville to demonstrate leadership in bike-friendly roads in its downtown core. Option 3 is a good balance for all stakeholders. Let's make our important and vibrant downtown Lakeshore Road as rider-friendly and safe to all cyclists, both local and visitors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hawes. Councillor DeMoff?
Thank you, Leon, for coming out tonight. You saw the motion that I want to bring forward in terms of looking at wider boulevards and bike lanes on Lakeshore Road, which would require us to remove parking on Lakeshore. And I know that you attended all of the workshops that were held, and the first one when we modeled the streets, as well as the second one. And I guess I have two questions. First is, how do you feel about widening the boulevards and making bike lanes without parking on Lakeshore, is my first question.
Oh, it would answer my prayers. But I was always under the impression that the BIA advocated that Lakeshore must have parking, and therefore parking was part of the compromise. But I would be delighted if that were the case. Then we would have, but whether it would meet the complete street section is another thing. But I don't know.
At the workshops, did the option? I mean, it's been brought up tonight that the removing parking was not something that came up in the workshops. But at the first one, was it ever explained that there were benefits to having bike lanes?
I think at that time we were so overwhelmed with all the variations of possibilities that could exist. It was relatively early on as I recall, it was around June or so. It was relatively early on in the focus groups meetings, and there were so many things to consider that some of it fell through the cracks, in my opinion. I think there was really not insufficient time to work on it and do some thinking. I think sometimes one needed the time to sort of formulate your own personal viewpoints and then persuade the table of 8 or whoever was sitting at your particular table that you had a valid point and you had to have something to demonstrate that.
And then at the second workshop, do you recall that we were presented with 3 options? Did any of them have the parking removed?
No.
So really it's always been presented that the parking had to be remain. It wasn't that it was an option that people could look at.
Absolutely, yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us this evening. As well as the super sharrows on Lakeshore, part of the recommendation is for dedicated cycling facilities on Church and Robinson that will be buffered bike lanes, including a painted buffer between the travel and the bike lanes, utilizing bright colored painted asphalt in stark contrast. Is that a viable alternative that's part of the recommendation?
The buffered bike lanes are a great idea, there's no doubt about it, and there's 2 ways of accomplishing that. One is to paint a double line with chevrons in between, as you've just described, and the other one is to simply move the parking out by that gap and have, therefore, sidewalk, bike lane, parking, travelled road. Those are the 2 ways of doing this thing.
I understand. So if we have the buffered lanes on Robinson and Church, connecting at Navy and Allen, you'd support that?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not rejecting any of the work in that regard at all. It's particularly Lakeshore that I'm emphasizing, simply because Lakeshore is the business district. Cycling does bring in business to the areas, as we've seen in many reports that are floating around, and it forms part of the waterfront trail.
No, I understand. I'm probably not as avid a cyclist as you are, but as Mr. Cozy said, it's about 75 paces from Lakeshore down to Robinson or up to Church, and I could probably make that in fairly quick order and be doubly safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Mr. Haas, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is David Harris from Oakville Cycling Club.
Mr. Harris, welcome. Council's looking forward to your information.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, councillors, members of the public. I'm here tonight not just as a member of the ever-growing cycling community in the area, but also as a pedestrian and a motorist. I was interested to learn of the downtown streetscape study, as I saw it as a once-in-50-year opportunity to provide a people-friendly main street in this town, as opposed to a car-centric one. I look forward to seeing a strategy defined that would ultimately lead us to a car-free Lakeshore Drive between Navy and Allen Streets, where one could sit at a sidewalk cafe and not be breathing exhaust fumes while looking at the side of a parked car, or walk down the street without having to worry about speeding traffic. Imagine my disappointment when, at the first community workshop on the topic, we were presented with 3 options, each one of which not only kept traffic driving through the main street, despite 3 parallel roads, Randall, Church and Robinson, being available to take the through traffic, but each option also kept curbside parking on both sides throughout the length of Lakeshore Drive, despite the availability of parking in lots and garages on other streets only a few yards away, as has been mentioned tonight. However, the one bright light for me was that option 3 showed the main street as having bike lanes throughout its length, which are essential if you want to encourage people to shop and bank by bike, especially those cyclists who are nervous of riding in the traffic lane. As a safety measure, bike lanes are infinitely superior to sharrows, as they provide a clearly defined space for cyclists and make it clear to both motorists and people getting out of parked cars that they need to watch for cyclists. As a cyclist, I'm happy to have that space to ride in, and as a motorist, I'm thankful for knowing that I should not encounter a cyclist in the traffic lane where there are bike lanes. Having now seen the final study report, I now understand that the recommended option for Lakeshore through downtown is sharrows, which means that cyclists and cars will be sharing the traffic lane. This is not a cycling-friendly approach, and thus goes counter to the vision of the town's active transportation master plan. And I quote, "The vision for the ATMP is that the town of Oakville is a pedestrian and cycling supportive community that encourages active transportation for both utilitarian and recreational travel through 1, ensuring that every street accommodates pedestrians and cyclists, and 2, through approved official plan policies and associated strategies which recognize that great places require pedestrian and cycling-friendly land development and streetscape design that supports the town of Oakville's vision to become the most livable town in Canada." I'd also like to quote to you item 5.9 of the recommended ATMP actions, that the town develops and adopts a complete streets strategy to inform and guide urban design, streetscape design, and road design in Oakville. At so many transportation conferences, one sees presentations by towns and cities that implemented complete streets policies. That is, streets that are people-centric rather than car-centric. And hears of the enormous successes that are achieved, not just in cities like New York, San Francisco, and Seattle, but in Canadian cities like Kitchener, Hamilton, Calgary, Ottawa, and Edmonton, where business has soared along with real estate values. Without bike lanes along Lakeshore, you will not have a complete street. I respectfully request that you reconsider the decision to install sharrows instead of bike lanes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Councillor DeMoff.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Leon. If the option were to have bike lanes and wider boulevards and remove the parking, what would your preference be? Option 3, or to, well, would you prefer with the parking or without the parking?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that of course is the key to turning this project around and for us to end up with a people-friendly main street. To be honest, personally, I don't understand this problem that people have in walking from a parking lot on Church Street or from the town square just a few yards to the stores in the main street. If I drive to Oakville Place, I find myself walking further from my car to the store in Oakville Place than I do if I go downtown and park on Church Street and access a Main Street store. You know, through the staged reconstruction of Lakeshore, there will be periods when 3 blocks at a time do not have parking. Why are we going to replace that parking? Why not go without parking And think of the additional sidewalk area that you can have if you do away with parking on both sides of the road.
I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I know you were at the Ontario Bike Summit with me last year. Do you recall the panel that they had about parking downtown? Mayor Dave Chislevich was one of the panelists from Madison, Wisconsin, and do you remember what they talked about? I probably should have jogged your memory before the meeting because I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I think Madison is where they insist that the bike paths are cleared of snow throughout the winter.
It is, yes. It is.
Another very successful, people-friendly cycling community.
Because they did a whole panel on the benefits of bike lanes downtown, the increase in sales. And unfortunately, you and I have attended. And when we go to these bike summits, I find that we get this information, but the business community is often afraid of change until it happens, and then they're quite happy with the results, but they haven't seen the success stories. So, okay, thank you. That was all.
Councillor Adams?
Can I just ask you about the concept of option 3, and I'm going to call it option 3A, which is the remove the parking option and including the bike lanes plus wider boulevards. If we removed all 120 spots that are on Lakeshore and had to replace them in a structured parking environment, depending on if it was below or above ground, it would cost us $6 to $8 million probably to replace those 120 spots. Do you think that's acceptable if we, either as taxpayers or parking fee payers, had to pay $6 to $8 million or cover that cost? Is that good use of value, or do you think we should just live without?
Well, from what I can see, you need this parking garage at Church and Thomas to provide the spaces that A, will be lost during construction temporarily, and B, that might be lost permanently if the decision was made to take parking off at least one side, if not both sides of Lakeshore through town. And for me, that's the cost of doing business. If you want to have a world-class, people-centric Main Street through downtown, past all these beautiful heritage buildings, that's one of the costs that you have to incur.
I think the argument we're going to hear is that the structured parking is ultimately required to support the cultural heritage, it's not heritage, the cultural facilities that are eventually going to get constructed there, or to replace the Centennial area and so forth. And on a temporary basis, it might help relieve parking requirements for the downtown in terms of the business area. And so if the 120 were additional spots that were required and we had to go and find them by creating new spaces above and beyond the structured parking that we're talking about later this evening, is that acceptable, or is that good use, or should we live without?
Now you're putting me on the spot. Who can say what it would cost?
Well,
But
the above grade parking is about $54,000 a stall, and the below grade parking is about $68,000 a stall. So 120 times one of those numbers is $6 to $8 million approximately.
But presumably you would be charging for this parking.
And we just heard from the BIA that $300 a month for parking is not acceptable.
Well, does it have to be 300?
Well, it has to be something. It has to be more than $50 a month, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a bargain, isn't it?
Thank you. I think you've perhaps answered the question, but if you have more to answer, then by all means.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate all your input here. At any of the meetings, did anybody suggest that you could have bike lanes, parking, and traffic on that space? Because what I've basically been looking at is getting 2 lanes. That's all to do this. So you need to widen the sidewalks, you need 1 lane, and for bicycle lanes, you need kind of another lane. So what would you think of if the Lakeshore was one way, so it didn't have 2-way traffic? So we picked up the extra lane from that point, and then you could have the 2 lanes of parking, you could have the bicycle lanes, and the wider sidewalks. from Navy to Allen one way.
Option 3 does have what you're looking for, of course. It has the parking, it has the 2 traffic lanes, and it has 2 bike lanes.
But with respect, it doesn't preserve the 120 lost things, does it?
Yes, option 3 has parking.
All right, well, I'm getting, fair enough.
None
I
of the
understand.
options presented so far are without parking.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Grant.
Sorry, not to jump into the fray, but you did say earlier that you don't understand why people are afraid to walk to the stores. And I understand that. I live close to Oakville Place. Everybody will find a good parking spot, even if it's far away, and walk to the store. But in removing the parking, what is your solution then?
It's, well, you still have parking, but you have it, what was quoted 75 meters away on Church Street instead of outside the store. And think about it this way. Now, if you go during the day and drive downtown, what are the odds of being able to park outside of the store that you want to anyway? You're probably in for more than a 75-meter walk just from your parking spot to where you want to go.
Well, let's flip that argument then. If you're talking about safety for cyclists, we're talking about cycling lanes, shared cycling lanes, safe cycling lanes 75 meters away on either side of the street of Lakeshore. What's wrong with that and having the parking on Lakeshore where there's already a shown traffic congestion?
Mm-hmm. When I talk about the undesirability of curbside parking, I'm not saying that with respect to cycling lanes, although it would of course be a benefit. I'm saying it with respect to having a people-friendly street. There was a term mentioned at this Niagara summit last week. Sticky sidewalks is what you want. You want to have a downtown that is so people-friendly that people don't want to leave. They want to go up and down the sidewalk, in and out of stores, spending their money. And all the time you have 2 rows of parked cars on either side of the street, the length of Lakeshore, traffic going down the middle. I'm sorry, for me that is not a people-friendly street, and I'm not going to spend half a day wandering up and down.
And I lived in Holland for a number of years. I understand probably the best solution is cycling and no cars whatsoever, but is it realistic for us to try and retrofit something like that into a solution or to an area that is already used to this traffic and parking, and at least making it safe for the cyclists on the side roads where there are provenly safer streets? All right, I'm getting into argument. I'm walking away.
Councillor Grant, I love how self-correcting you are. Mr. Harris, thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
Next delegation is David Mallon, President of Trafalgar Chartwell Residents Association.
Mr. Mallon, welcome. We look forward to the light you will shed on this subject.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. We come to support the work that has been done. We are pleased to be part of the focus group. We thought that the focus group was very well managed, very well run, and produced what we thought wasn't everybody's first choice, but nevertheless a pretty good balance of the many competing interests that participated in the focus group. And I'm referring both to DCH and DTS. I would just caution that part of the deal in Oakville Lakeside RA and Trafalgar Chartwell being invited to the focus group was that we would inform other residents' associations in Oakville of the outcome of the discussions. We received the DTS report only on Friday and the DCH report slightly prior to that, and I must say we have not had time as yet to carry out that part of our mandate to inform other residents' associations. Therefore, our comments here tonight are preliminary, and should we need to come back again at some future time, we may have to do that once we get feedback from them. Having said that, TCRA's view is that we thought the outcome of both the DCH and DTS provided a strong vision for the way forward for Oakville. It preserves downtown Oakville as a regional destination the upgraded infrastructure and streetscape that are foreseen for downtown Oakville are going to provide an excellent environment for our well-known town. Specifically, the downtown definition, the so-called distributed result that came out of the focus group, provides a definition of downtown from Lakeshore to Navy to Church Street to George Street with node points at each intersection. The post office would be redeveloped. Town Square would be as is, or perhaps redeveloped in the future. And then the new cultural hub, where the Centennial Square is at the moment, would provide the anchor to this area. So we thought that in the end, although we had some reservations along the way, that it came out pretty well. We believe that this will encourage a vibrant commerce in the town eventually when it is constructed. We realize it's going to take time. Will encourage a vibrant culture as well when the cultural elements come into their own. We also look forward to the next part of this as we see it as part, and that is the riverfront vision. Colleen Bell, the Commissioner, referred to it as a harbour study. We certainly see it as a long-term plan, medium to long-term plan, to open up the riverfront, 16 Mile Creek, both sides, if possible, to more public areas that can be used for walking, for recreation. Just to speak briefly about the focus group and the public participation and communication, our view is that this went very well. It was very well done. There was good communication, there was good consultation, there was a good sense of trust, although of course not everybody got what they wanted. There were compromises. The community views were heard, and we thought there was overall a commitment on the part of both staff and participants to outstanding outcomes for Oakville. We think that both council and staff have something here to be proud of. Thank you. Concerns? Yes, we have a few. Current state of commerce downtown is troubling us. We do not see these longer-term initiatives as dealing with the current problems. In fact, we think delaying and indecision and waiting for decisions is actually making the current state of commerce worse and not better. So we do see that there is a priority here for council to find either short-term measures that can relieve some of the pain, or to recognize that uncertainty and delay is causing some worsening of the situation, and to move ahead as quickly as possible where possible. The patient is unfortunately not got a long-term sickness. The patient is ill now, and first aid is needed to keep the patient alive so we can treat the long-term problem. We also, and this is something which does concern me, I'm starting to hear from people I know outside of town about these vacancies downtown. I'm concerned that this current vacancy situation downtown is affecting the perception of Oakville and the reputation of Oakville from areas outside of Oakville itself. We've always had a great reputation. People say, oh, you live in Oakville, that's really terrific, you know. It's not happening so much. I was in a conversation only a couple of days ago when someone who had visited from Burlington said, oh yeah, it's really bad downtown Oakville. There's 30% vacancies there on Main Street. They're really in trouble. It's not correct. We all know it's not correct, but it's not the kind of gossip or talk that we want to hear from our neighboring communities. It just adds to this concern that we have that there's a problem today and it needs some action. If I may, and I realize the garage hasn't come up yet, but at the risk of hearing me go through this all again, I would just like to cover the garage briefly. We accept the need for additional parking. We're not saying that it's not necessary. We're not experts in parking. The town and various folks that are competent to speak to it have clearly established a need for parking, so fine. We would suggest encourage near-term measures to add capacity wherever possible, to allow an early start on road reconstruction if that's going to solve the problem, although it seems that it's going to be at least 4 years out before we see the road construction finished. So anything which can be done to reduce that time period would be good. reduce the monthly permit waiting list. We have one suggestion about that, and that is, can we utilize the existing hospital garage in some way for monthly permit holders? Maybe we can give them free parking there and a shuttle bus to downtown, and maybe that'll deal with the backlog for the applications for monthly permits, 689, I believe. That's just a suggestion. I don't know how feasible it is, but it is something we could look at. Improve signage. If we could improve the signage to the underutilized parking garage, also located on Church Street, and other parking areas which are less, there's less demand than those on Church Street at the West End, this would all help to distribute the parking load amongst the available parking capacity. Anything that can be done in the short term, and remember, short term now means less than 4 years, depending on how quickly the parking garage can be built. Maybe it's less than 2 years, but that's still a significant period in the lifespan of some of the downtown merchants. So anything that can be done, we think will help. Notwithstanding the urgency to address the parking issue, we are concerned that the construction of a parking garage as a parking garage only may be a mistake in the long term. The planning horizon for all of this work is 50 years. We're not sure that 50 years from now a parking garage located on Church Street is really going to add a lot to downtown Oakville. We would suggest that the highest and best use of this property be considered. It's going to become a key area of high-value property given the town's plans for this area. And we have a definition of highest and best use. It's an appraisal definition. I'm not going into it now. If anybody is interested in it, I'll be happy to share it with them. So our suggestion is that, in line with your own thinking, that a business case analysis of garage options be undertaken, particularly putting as much of the parking underneath, underground, as is economically justifiable. The highest and best use does talk about the economics, and we see this as strictly an economic issue. It needs to be addressed, the extra cost of providing underground parking versus the extra revenue that would come from some of that space being commercial or residential above grade and retail at grade. And that is still our preference if it could be achieved. There was talk at the last focus group meeting that the post office building itself may not survive further examination. It may not be worth keeping it. That would provide additional underground parking if a new building had to be constructed there. And it would make common sense to connect any parking built underneath the post office building with the new parking garage. So we do urge that those issues be looked at so that we do end up using the building and the space for the highest possible value. Roof options on the garage. The mayor referred to the possibility of a terrace, a rooftop terrace. I'm not sure if it's a viable option, but why not? We should at least look at it. The green roof is really not a good application in a parking garage. It's really not the right answer, but solar panels may well be. Again, should be looked at in the business option. And what about a public-private partnership to construct this or design-build? 24 months, in my experience at least, should be more than enough to build this garage. We are concerned from a cost point of view that if the decision is made to move ahead with the garage quickly, that we do hope means can be found to finance it that will not displace existing project commitments from the capital budget, meaning specifically community centres. We're rather keen on ours. In considering deferral, we have not had time to consider it or the implications of it, and therefore we cannot give a good answer to this. However, we do recognise the uncertainty that this project and the timing of it has had in terms of the business community, and anything which can be done to remove the uncertainty will be helpful. Finally, we would say that TCRA supports proceeding with the business case for the garage, and would suggest that as soon as comments can be obtained back from the BIA and others who may wish to comment, say a month thereabouts, that the engineering be authorized to go ahead with the Lakeshore Road reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mallon. Councillor Hutchins.
Yes, David, thank you very much for coming out. Very much appreciated. If I heard you correctly, you're looking for perhaps a deferral so that the BIA and others can come back to present more on the streetscape.
Yes, even if the, as Mr. Cozy has elucidated, even if the go-ahead is given right away, we're still talking 4 years before that project is finished. The parking garage could proceed in the meantime, and the parking garage would probably be finished at about the same time as the engineering got finished for Lakeshore Road, and then Lakeshore Road could continue. So it would seem to us that we kind of need to get on with this. Notwithstanding, of course, we do have to give folks the opportunity to get back and comment on what they've heard pretty recently. So I allow a reasonable time for commentary back, but let's get on with it.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. You always bring a very insightful and thoughtful presentation, so thank you.
Thank you.
My question's probably more directed towards staff, because you're the third person who's given a presentation, and there seems to be a perception that there's a shortage of parking downtown. And the parking study that was done in 2012 said that we needed a parking garage within about 10 years. So that's by 2022. So it's not that it was an urgent need that was for today that we need, or even in 5 years that we needed a parking garage. It was that within 10 years we would. And also, what was the parking capacity? I mean, I've read through what we had, and really the problem is that the parking in front of a store, but there's not a shortage of parking overall in downtown Oakville, and there is a shortage of permit parking. So is that does that summarize what was in the report?
The 2012 commercial parking study indicated that the utilization rate was in 73%, which was approaching that 85% number that is industry standard that says you're getting close to capacity to allow enough turnover of parking. It did recommend that the town secure assets to consider building, to obtain assets to expand the parking supply in the downtown within the 10-year time frame. As I was saying earlier in my presentation, and it's probably better covered in the other presentation on the garage, there are other things going on in the downtown with regards to the downtown cultural hub, the construction of Lakeshore Road. You're correct, there's a great shortage of permit parking downtown, and the garage would address all those issues. So do you want to wait 7, 8, 9 years and build the garage then to address these issues? Or would you like to address these issues earlier on in that 10-year time frame? We think there's some merit in considering going forward with the garage first, because it will provide that flexibility when the cultural hub goes forward, because we will lose additional parking there in the short term.
Councillor, can I let Mr. Mallon go? Well,
Sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
Councillor Elgar has a question for Mr. Mallon.
The only question is, would it be possible to get a copy of your report you said about highest and best use information that you have?
Yes, sure, I'd be happy to let you have that.
Thank you.
Councillor DeMoff. Thank you, Mr. Mallon.
Thank you.
The other question just had to do with funding. We don't have funding to do, we don't have anything in our capital budget right now for a parking garage, for the streets, or for the community center that he was discussing. So we wouldn't be, if we were to do a parking garage, we wouldn't be displacing the southeast community center, because it's not in the budget right now either, correct?
What we have in the budget right now is funds in, I think it's 2020 or 2021, in order to be able to construct the South Central Community Center. So that is in the budget. The funds for the Lakeshore is not in the budget, nor is the parking garage in the budget, but the design work for Lakeshore is in the budget.
Sorry, there's nothing in the budget for the cultural hub either.
That's correct.
And until you have a project, let's just be clear, that you want to do, you'll never see it in the budget. So we may have the cart before the horse here with respect. Madam Clerk, the next delegation. Oh, Council, we have 2 more delegations and 15 minutes before the hour. Councillor Grant, are you moving that we proceed past the hour? We don't need a seconder. We just need a vote. All those in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Madam Clerk, the next delegation, please. And maybe for the audience's benefit, that takes us only to 10:30.
Next delegation is Marcy Small.
Ms. Small, welcome. Council
you.
looks forward to the light you may shed.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and thank Council for being patient with everybody. You do an incredible job. I'm amazed. I have an interesting thing that I want to put forward here tonight, and because I was at the meeting this morning with the AGM, so I will cover that at the end of my talk. However, what I would like to say is that I am all for going forward with this design work. I think it's critical. I think it's an absolute yes. I think it's something that's well deserved. And how can we go to the next step without first doing this step? I cannot tell you how many meetings that I attended in those workshops. They were amazing. They were well orchestrated. They were well advertised. There was postcards. There was emails. There was emails from the BIA. There was a lot of notification to the residents, to the BIA, and anybody, quite frankly, who wanted to come could come and participate and offer their input. And there are some people who sleep until we get to a day like today. Unfortunately, that is life, right? That was out there, and anybody who wanted to be active in this, we're told all along by everybody, and I must say, this consulting group here, they are amazing. They do an amazing job with what they've put together. I cannot speak highly enough. And same with the Works people. The Works people are so patient with everybody of all age groups, all demographics, and they really put a lot of work out here. We as a downtown, I'm speaking because I'm a merchant downtown, and I've been down there for, almost don't want to say how long, but a long time, long time. And we've been waiting for the street to be redone. And when this came forward to do the streetscape, we were excited about it. I can't tell you how excited I am to know I'm going to have granite, to know I'm going to have brand new beautiful trees, to know I'm going to have new benches on the street, new receptacles, all of that beautiful stuff that goes with it. And even with the construction, when they're just doing 3 blocks at a time, that's a little inconvenience, but it's going to create a buzz. It's going to create, hey, have you seen what they're doing in downtown? This is exciting. We need this, in my opinion, for the economic viability of downtown, for the businesses that are suffering. And there are businesses suffering, but take a look at the ones that even through this process of the suffering of the economy and the regrowth of the economy, they are still themselves rebuilding their own existing businesses. I this morning mentioned a few. There's like M for Men, Burroughs, Titika, Salon Monster. The list goes on. There are those out there that are still being strong, and they love the downtown. We need to love it as much, and we need to stop getting caught up in our own personal, private issues. We have to realize it's all of our downtown. The streetscape came first. This parking garage was something that was all of a sudden popped into the plate. Granted that Keith Bird did bring this up many, 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 many years ago. We all know that. That was a big thing for him. And at the time, this got put off, and here we are today. Now, in October, the parking garage came up. As all of a sudden, it fell out of the sky. It was just there. Meanwhile, we were all going forward with the streetscape, all excited about the streetscape, participated in all these workshops, many, many hours. And at that time, I was on the board, right? And there was a lot of dedication. There's still a lot of people who are still down there for the streetscape, right? We need that streetscape. It's going to make our downtown a beautiful downtown. I'm all for the parking garage, but I'm for that next. We started with the mission of the streetscape. We should continue with what we've started with instead of jumping all over the place. I think we should totally go for this design work, and we should start moving forward. If others are slow on the go and they need more time, they should go onto your website. They should become an advocate of your website, the town's website when I say that, because everything's there for the public. Everything's there for anybody who wants to be part of that. You've got a great website now. It's very, very user-friendly. If I can find the information, why can't the rest of the people find the information? It's all a matter of how it's going to impact them personally. On Friday, all of a sudden, there was this hub of people, I heard, that were going to come to the AGM meeting this morning, and they were going to all of a sudden oppose a bunch of stuff. This was all brand new. This was not even anywhere until Friday. And then this morning, all of a sudden, there's all this group of people who are saying, no, we want the garage first. Just like that. And they want the whole, and they're not speaking for the whole of the street. They're speaking for that group that was there and that rallied together to say that. Now, they're entitled to their opinion, and I respect their opinion. It's their opinion. They can say their opinion. But it's my turn today to say my opinion. And my opinion is that we have spent a lot of money and a lot of the town and a lot of the public's money putting together all these meetings, hiring all these incredibly talented people. We should be moving forward with this. This is what we started out with. And you know what? If we do the parking garage, there's like, I think 73, spaces in that, or on lot 2. So once that's being built, we're going to lose 73 spaces while that's being built. It's no different than losing some spaces on Lakeshore. No matter how you look at it, there's going to be some pain and suffering. It's just the way that it is. It's all part, and it's all the cost of doing business. And this gentleman who spoke from the Residents Association, I'm totally on tap with where he's coming from. He's done his homework. We need to move forward. Totally need to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Small. Questions? Councilor O'Meara?
Thank you, Ms. Small, for coming and delegating. So, so you as a business owner, downtown Oakville, then are not aligned with the downtown Oakville BIA's position to wait?
This position today was brand new as of today only.
And I'm not talking about, I don't think council is having an if or, we're not talking about the parking garage, just separate that out aside for now, but just in terms of proceeding ahead with the design proposals for the streetscape, the downtown BIA asked that that be deferred, so you would not agree with that then?
No, and I did not hear that was said today in today's AGM. What was said in today's AGM is that they wanted to defer and they wanted to support a garage. There was nothing that was said today about the design work.
Okay,
the design work is something completely different to what they're asking for.
Okay,
so
thank you.
That's my answer.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank you.
All right, that's the last delegation we had listed for the streetscape. We have, at 10 minutes per, we've got not a lot of time left, but I see 2 hands. Will there be any more? All right. I saw Dr. Foley first and Mr. Miller second, so that's your order. Mr. Foley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the council. I'm going to be 5 minutes at the most, but I think there's a few things. I think that the work that the city has done, or the town has done, and the staff has done, and the consultants, those that are here and those who are not here on the various reports, have done a phenomenal job. I think that the issue of repairing and reconstructing Lakeshore Road is without question a priority. It's also without question going to be an extremely painful period for business in the downtown area. There's no question about that. The downtown area right now is already suffering from vacancies, and I think I'd like to talk about what are some of the symptoms of those vacancies. In part, it's the uncertainty, and I do a lot of work in real estate in the GTA and outside in other communities in Ontario. Oakville has been tagged, you may say fairly or unfairly, and Oakville Town Council is part of that, as being not making decisions, of extending the decision about when will the road be done, whether it's 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. There are a lot of rumors out there. And I think, you know, one of my major messages would be that this dithering or this indecision or, you know, these significant decisions about, you know, the capital spending that's associated with these major projects, they need to be made, and they need to be made quickly. And I think, you know, part of what Marcia said a moment ago, I think is a very valid thing. In business does not work well with uncertainty. And I can tell you as recently as in the last week, I'm a landlord. I own 2 buildings. I operate my business in downtown Oakville. I've had 2 major national, international companies that looked seriously at coming to downtown Oakville and decided against it. Why? Because there was insufficient foot traffic. And one of the exponents of foot traffic is parking. Whether we like it or not, no matter how many bikes you have or how much you think, how many bike lanes we ought to have, we are in the GTA a car community, and we depend on cars to feed, you know, the mercantile, whether it's Oakville Place or downtown, Maple Grove or wherever, and that's a fact. So there is a very real concern in the mind of the commercial real estate industry about the lack of receptivity to making downtown Oakville attractive to businesses, providing the certainty, removing the question as to what will happen with the with parking, with the roadway. The cultural center, I think, is more of a secondary thing. It doesn't really particularly impact in a direct way, or at least, let's say, retail as opposed to food. But you know, the whole thing in its in all the pieces wrapped together is one of confusion. Some may say chaos, but certainly it is. We are not doing ourselves a favor. I think that everyone in the room and everyone here obviously believes in downtown Oakville. I think it is a jewel of a downtown. It's fallen into some disrepair and some problems. But the time and the attention, the sort of diligence that's essential to address these and to fix them is missing. And I think your mission as councillors and our elected representatives is to get on with it. I think there's no question in my mind, I don't think there's a question in the mind of most people who run a business, whether they're a landlord or a tenant, that the engineering work, the issue that's in front of you this evening, has to be decided. In fact, in my opinion, if it's not approved, then it's a dereliction of duty, and I think that the town staff have done an excellent job. I would agree with Marcia that the public process the town ran was, for the most part, second to none. It was extremely well done, and I think we should be proud of it. I think that the gentleman from the Lakeside community, I think he captured many of the same issues and concerns of many people, and I think that really sort of resonates strongly. There is, however, with respect to parking, there's no question there has been a long-term parking problem, and to remove parking along Lakeshore without a garage or a master plan is really adding to the difficulty we currently have. One of the concerns I have about a parking garage, while I believe we need a parking garage, and I believe that the parking garage needs to be done in advance of the road work on Lakeshore, is that we don't build another GO Station parking lot. That that a parking lot that we build in downtown Oakville has to be part of the fabric and the construction and design of the downtown that we're creating, and whether it's more floors underground, whether the streetscape of it is, got some businesses on the ground floor, but it has to be done in a tasteful manner, not just a parking building. I think that you know, a few people have said we're looking out many years, and I've blown my 5 minutes. We have to be thinking about what are the buildings that we want to build in downtown Oakville that will be here in 50 years' time, and whether those are hotels, whether they're condominiums, whether they're public buildings. We need to create more buildings downtown. Part of the problem of the foot traffic in downtown is that we are building condos at 2 million plus that have 1 or 2 people living in them who are away half the year. That's not adding to the downtown commerce. We need more of the kind of development that's happening at Randall and Dorval to create more presence in downtown. We need more commercial properties to create downtown pedestrian traffic. I think that, you know, as a landlord who has a vacant building, I've seen these things. My commitment to downtown, I've already arranged financing for $500,000 to put into my building. My intent is to do it to make the building more attractive, to make it more suitable. I don't know that there are, the issue is that there is a lack of people interested in downtown, but there's a in the downtown buildings, I think there's a concern more about when will the town of Oakville rather make a decision, when will it be clear, and when can people get on with it. I think that, you know, I've personally heard from tenants, major tenants, I'm not talking about independent tenants who are looking at Canada as a market and looking at Oakville as part of that market, who are saying that we're going to wait until until the downtown has been fixed, has been done. That's more the retail type of tenant as opposed to food tenants, and we need to be conscious of that. I think it's you know, the question was asked, well, what does Bentall Kennedy say? Well, I think maybe they have an opinion or don't have an opinion. Maybe they want to share it or they don't. But I think that it's wrong for you as a council to say that Bentall Kennedy is the only tenant downtown. They own approximately 20 buildings. There are approximately 150 buildings. So it would be inappropriate to overlook the other 130 owners of buildings downtown. Second of all, and I say it with respect, I think it's a flippant comment to ask people who come up here whether the parking should be $5 or $50 a month or $200. Parking rates are already set by people who run parking lots. I think if we are going to price the parking lots out, then we're just creating another problem for the future, and that I don't think is what anyone here is really intending. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. Were you able to hear my question of the BIA to the effect of, did they want us to wait until the fall and do everything at once? There's a submerged issue in here, which is there's a division on council as to 2A, 3, or 3A, where 3A I'm inventing to describe wider sidewalks with bike lanes and perhaps losing parking. So there's these, the 2A recommended option by staff, there's this option 3 and this hybrid of 3. It's not clear to me whether council believes in taking parking off of Lakeshore or not. But some members of council, to my eye, clearly believe that it'd be a better decision if everything was in view at the same time, including the business cases for the various pieces. And that would take us to the fall. It would delay, as the commissioner said, construction by that amount, right, because of the way it backs up the design. And the BIA was comfortable with that delay. Are you comfortable with that delay?
I think so. I mean, a certain amount of time or a lot of time has passed. I quite frankly have never understood this piecemeal approach to things. I mean, the downtown has to have an integrated plan, and I think that there are a lot of things that are going on at the moment at various stages, and I think they should all be considered in their totality.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Adams?
I want to follow up on your comments about parking. I am talking about the cost of parking because the cost of the parking garage is quite substantial. And I want to understand people's willingness to pay higher parking fees, either within the parking garage or within our entire parking, I'll call it our parking fleet, whether it be surface parking or structured parking, in order to carry the cost of such a structure.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, if you built a building and had parking, the price of parking is the price of parking. It's a pretty, you know, the numbers you quoted are fairly standard. It's not rocket science. The people who operate parking lots know what it takes to get a return on them. They're all over the place. So I think you're waving about numbers of 200 or 300 or 50. I think that does not lend to the discussion. I think we know what the rates are in downtown. I mean, I park downtown in an underground parking lot. It's $90 a month. So I don't know how.
Thank you, Councillor. We don't have enough time for an argument, and you both have a very clear view on it. You've given a very clear explanation of why you did it.
Thank you.
And Mr. Foley, thank you very much for coming. Councillor Elgar.
What do you want done first? Do the street and then think about the parking?
He clearly said he wanted the garage first.
Parking.
You want the parking first for
Well,
sure.
I think that it's the logical thing in the integration of how you would lay this out.
Thank you.
All right. I'm just cautioning council. We end at 10:30. Councillor DeMoff, did you have a question of Mr. Foley?
I did. Just because I certainly didn't mean to imply that that was the only landlord that was important, and I would be very interested to know why you think the foot traffic is lower than, or that you indicated that tenants weren't interested because of lower foot traffic, and I'd be very interested to know if you have any ideas as to why it's so low.
Well, I think it's low on certain days, which is obviously partly a function of the days of the week. Weekends are busy. But there is a lack of parking, immediacy of parking, and people are turned off by the fact that parking is not easily available or reliably available. Whether it's a surface lot or a parking structure or the street parking. So that's a real function. I think that there's a campaign of the parking harassment or the parking Gestapo who are downtown, who hand out tickets willy-nilly, and it really, if you're the recipient of a $20 parking ticket, why would you come downtown instead of going to Oakville Place or Maple Grove or wherever? It's our interests are not aligned, and that's an issue. I think that, quite frankly, some of the problem rests with the merchants in downtown, that we should be behaving like a shopping mall where we have longer hours. In my own lease, I put in operating hours because if you're running a downtown and it's open 9 to 5, I'm afraid you're not in business and you're not in competition with RioCan or any of the other REITs that are running, commercial shopping plazas. And I think, there are some natural things like the weather, obviously, that are having a problem. But I think the biggest issue is and remains the uncertainty, and that uncertainty has been spawned in newspaper articles that have been negative, have been, I think, deleterious to the impression of Oakville. The Oakville today, the reputation of the Oakville today is not what it was 5 years ago. Certainly not what it was 10 years or 15 years ago when I bought property. And I think that is a very significant problem. We have allowed it to fester. I don't think we do a sufficient amount of marketing about the downtown. We have not branded the downtown like the Distillery, like Yorkville, like Liberty Village. And yet, I think in many ways, downtown Oakville blows all of those away. And so, we have a job, all of us, in terms of fixing that problem. And that problem is not just a BIA problem. That problem is a town of Oakville problem, it's a landlord problem, it's a tenant problem. It's not a matter of pointing fingers at people. I think one of the problems in downtown Oakville is that landlords, and I'm speaking as a landlord, are not putting enough money into their buildings. I've between the two buildings I own, I've thrown about $1 million into them. And that's the price of business if you want to remain attractive and competitive. Loblaws yesterday announced a $1.2 billion investment in their property. And so, we need to think about how do we align those interests and those issues to I think a bit of a social contract with the health and wealth of downtown Oakville.
Janet Haslett-Thiel next, then Mr. Miller. She was on the list. I missed her on the list. Council, when we have to recess at 10:30, I propose to reconvene us tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Okay, so I guess I should go quick. Thank you for staying late and for your time. Let me begin by saying that I'm a 25-year resident of Oakville. I am not here tonight as the chair of the Joshua Creek Residents Association, largely because I received all this information with very limited notice for my board and my members to provide input. And respectfully to the comment that was made earlier about everything can be read on the website, my board has made a tremendous effort to stay involved in this process. Over half my board has gone to all the consultations. We have written position papers on all the different options. And I do want to say thank you for listening, because what a tremendous, you see the iterations that have come out in the consultation process. It's been helpful. It's a little disheartening to hear you want to make decisions now, having given us just the final with less than 24 hours to circulate it. So that's my chair of JCRA hat. We would ask that there be a deferral so that we could come back, seek some input from our members and the board. However, I intentionally signed up today to say, let's not defer this into the fall. Let's get on with this. You have done an exemplary job of asking people for their opinion. It's been interactive. If the people weren't at the workshops, it wasn't for a lack of people trying to reach out to them. And I say that with all due respect. I'm a busy person. I spend all day at work and still, other people work. We know it's hard to get their attention. But to give 6 more months to add new iterations to this, it boggles my mind. At some point, we have to make a decision. So let me talk about the parking garage. I am one of the few voices that said early on, what about the parking? And I am here today as a shopper and as a resident. And parking does matter. It impacts your decision in terms of where you go, but it's also about convenience. And you're not going to change our habits in terms of convenience. We want to be able to get into downtown. We want to be able to shop, have a pleasant, enjoyable experience, enjoy the beauty of downtown. But we need to be able to park. And I live, our Residents Association, I live on the other side of Southeast Oakville. I'm as close to Mississauga as you can get, okay? And yes, I drive into downtown. And most of my board would say to you, we come into downtown, we drive, and we're looking for parking. And we're circling the block, and we're circling the block, and we're trying to find a spot because we've got a doctor's appointment, or we've got another event, or we're trying to connect with someone. Parking is a problem. No amount of study could ever persuade us that it's not a problem. It's a problem, okay? And you need to find a solution. And they've presented you with one, a parking garage. The parking garage, as you've heard, it creates flexibility for us. It gives the businesses a sense of there's something in the works that's going to help mitigate that discomfort somebody might have about shopping when there's construction going on. It's going to keep downtown top of mind as a shopping choice. And as a business person, you know, we owe it to them to give them a sense of certainty and to allow them to see the future coming to fruition. 6 more months, 5 more months to look at a business case on parking, that's not necessary. You know, if you need 60 to 90 days to pull it together, to really reassess it, okay, take 60 to 90 days, but then make a decision. You're either going to invest in downtown and the need for parking, or you're not. But we're prolonging this for them, and they do deserve answers. Let me look at my notes because I didn't have time to script anything.
Well, you've stopped at a point where it'd be very helpful if you could enlarge on your remarks briefly. The delay is to consider this in the light of the 10-year capital budget. In the 10-year capital budget, as you heard, we have some projects, one of which I know you care about.
And I understand it is in the capital budget, 2021.
But the garage is not. And
Right.
as I understand it, you would like that moved forward.
Are you asking me about the community center?
What I'm trying to call your attention to is the delay is not to do a business case for the parking garage, although that would be done. The suggestion was, let's get to the capital budget stage, which is later this year, so that we can make the choices and choose from a comprehensive framework. And we don't accidentally, I mean, if we got on with the parking garage and chose to do it, then we'd be slipping things backwards, maybe, and you might not like that. And so the concept being recommended by staff was, why don't we look at all of the projects, the 10 years of projects together?
So respectfully?
That was the reason for it, not the business case.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to put in.
Okay, so I appreciate the clarification. Respectfully, fair geographic distribution of community centers should not be on the table. You already endorsed that. You already said that that was something that you took pride in supporting. So we may end up 2021. I doubt we may not, or may end up earlier. I get that you have to make some economic decisions about how the money gets spent. To me, the parking garage is an economic decision about, are you going to invest in downtown? Do you accept that when you build a cultural hub, when you want access to that riverfront, that the consumer needs parking in order to bring themselves there? That it's about the consumer. So I hope that I'm not going to be at this microphone defending fair geographic distribution of community centers. I will be here, you know that, and so will the coalition. What I'm here today as a shopper, as a resident, is to say parking matters. Downtown matters. You're going to have to make this decision. Do you need 6 months to do that? Because that's 6 more months when it's going to take 18 to 24 months to do the detailed engineering. You could get going, you could have a parking garage, you could mitigate the negatives to the downtown. I think that there's a need to get on with it. And I think the word that was used, and it's been used in the South Central Land Study, is certainty. People need certainty. If you in your wisdom decide that the fall is when you're going to give us certainty, then I've made my pitch as a shopper and as a business person that I think you can do it sooner. I leave it to your good judgment. But parking does matter. It does affect how we choose where we shop. And it's not about getting the one right in front of the store. It's also about, families with strollers. It's also about elderly people who do want to be able to park within the district. There's a whole bunch of things to consider here. I end my comments with saying I trust that you'll use good judgment.
Thank you very much. I don't want to be taken for having suggested that the community center would move. The 10-year capital budget is an $800 million collection of projects. That's what I was trying to call your attention to.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We have one more delegation that I know of, and that's Bruce Miller. And 11 minutes. Commissioner.
Seconds, Mayor Burton. The moving forward of the design work is essential for keeping the 2017 timeframe. But there's a substantial amount of work that needs to happen on the underground component. So I just wanted to put out to you that as a suggestion, as soon as we determine what is the above ground work, the better to retain the timeframe. But you could give us direction at some point in time that we proceed with the underground design work and that you'll follow through with the decision on the above ground. And that would then allow us to keep the 2017 timeframe, but a little bit more time for you to deal with the cross sections and how you want to treat on the top.
Does the cross-section work on top, the design work for that, do you need the cross-section chosen, or can you entertain one or two?
Could entertain one or two. What that direction would allow us to do is start the underground in terms of the detailed design, and then we could entertain one or two designs for the cross-section.
All right, Mr. Miller.
Wow, I better be fast. Okay, Bruce Miller from the Works, head office, downtown Oakville, very proud resident. Also have the Works Gourmet Burger Bistro downtown. And I want to talk to you quickly in terms of downtown Oakville. The analogy was used this morning in our AGM is the golden goose of Oakville. It's on life support right now. You do not perform surgery on a patient when it's on life support. So the recommendation that was passed, I want to give some clarity, passed at the AGM this morning by 90% of the voters that were there, was to be able to do the parking garage first, give the patient some life support, get it back into a decent shape before you perform the surgery, and to do the streetscape second. So the third ask was to be able to say, give us a defined time. You've heard, give us clarity, give us clarity. My recommendation or suggestion is, give clarity that the streetscape does not start before a certain date. That is clarity. What landlords need, and I know Bentall won't get a chance to get up, so they're my landlord, I've been in discussions with them and their president, so hopefully they're okay that I speak on their behalf, is that to be able to go to a prospective tenant right now, to be able to say that we are gonna have construction for 2 years out of 5, sign a 5-year lease, their answers are gonna be 0 every time. To be able to go to a prospective tenant to be able to say, construction will not start before 5 years, sign a 5-year lease, their chances go through the roof in terms of opportunities. That's a suggestion in terms of giving clarity points. The town's done a fabulous job in terms, so we're in favor of the garage, we're in favor of the streetscape, we're just in favor of staging it. It makes sense from an engineering standpoint, it sounds like from Dan, to be able to do the garage first while doing the feasibility study work on the streetscape, but just make a decision quickly as a council to be able to say, but not before a certain date. That is the clarity that you'll go and give to the landlords to move forward. Quickly, one of the councils was asking around mitigation studies. I have 25 shops across 25 networks and cities within Ontario, so I have a unique perspective. I see all these communities, and vacancy rate in Oakville is the highest of 25. That's not a proud number. So to be able to go through and correct that, you need to be able to go through and make sure that we get these things filled. You got to give them certainty. Some of the mitigation studies that I've seen in other communities like Kingston, Ottawa, Guelph, I've got one in each one. The bottom line, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, none of them are effective. The most effective that I've seen is within Ottawa, within a community called Glebe, which was absolutely the golden goose. It is no longer the golden goose of Ottawa, by the way. There's a new one. They went through the exact same beautification study and underground. They had radio advertising, they had print advertising, they had all kinds of specials to be able to drive people into the area. And this is major media. This isn't Oakville radio. And still, I was the lucky one. I was down 30%. I was right at the edge of it. So I was right as you go into that community. I was the best of the lot. And that was with radio advertising and print advertising and everything else. People will change their purchase behaviors in 2 years' time. Whether we do it 1 block at a time, 3 blocks at a time, it's going to happen. The only mitigation strategy that I've seen that's effective is financial tax relief for the tenants and the landlords. It's the only way to be able to keep their shops open. There's no way to be able to stop the denigration of their sales. It's going to happen. So instead of trying to put in mitigation studies and giving the impression or the hope that the sales are still going to be there, they're not going to be. I'm happy to give you at another time case studies on it. The reality is you need to be able to give them some financial compensation during that time. It's the only way they're going to be able to stay open. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you. All right, Council, we have 3 items and 6 minutes, and it's my estimate that we can't do anything in the remaining time. And Councillor Adams.
It was suggested earlier that a little bit more time for consideration of some of the things by the public would be helpful. And so I'd like to ask if we could reconvene the meeting in April after we've done with the budget.
All right. Then the way it works, if we adjourn the meeting, these items go over to the next meeting, and so that covers that off. And the only thing that I would then, and so we will either bring this up at the next P&D in April, or we'll find a special day and I'll issue a special council meeting call. For this evening then, we need to rise and report to council and consider and read the bylaws, and then we'll be adjourned. So Councillor Knoll moves that we rise and report. Is there agreement that it's time to do that? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Now, where is my little list?
Are you deferring 11, 12, and 13?
No, it's just carrying over. All right. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and made recommendations on consent items 1 and 2, confidential consent items C1 and C2, public hearing items 3 and 4, discussions item 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 14, confidential discussion item C3, and advisory committee minutes item 10, as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for this report. Councillor Duddick and Councillor Lapworth, all in favor? Opposed? The report is adopted. There's little time for new business. Let's hope there isn't any. Thank you. A mover and seconder for consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Duddick and Councillor Elgar. The bylaws as listed in the agenda. Can't take any out. So that's 2015-13, 2015-18 as revised, 2015-22, and 2015-33, the confirmatory bylaw. All in favor? Opposed? The bylaws are adopted.
I think we need a motion to defer those items to the April meeting, and Commissioner Clemency is confirming that also.
All right. The clerk and I differ on what happens to items not done. She'd be more comfortable if we had a motion to defer them. Both are correct in my view, and I don't mind the extra security of making the clerk happy. That's always good. Councillor Giddings moves, Councillor Duddick seconds. Items 11, 12, and 13 are deferred. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That carries. Well, that completed almost all of the work that was before us. And it's been great working with you and all of the members of the community. And I look forward to the next time we gather on this and the other topics, and we are adjourned.